I'm like, I think all my daughters order on her account too.
Yeah, my son does, but he stays off it for the most part.
Oh, man.
Holy cow, we might be getting a new tree.
New tree?
Yeah, Christmas tree, pre-lit.
Okay.
You know what? Next Saturday on the 3rd, you can go buy one already decorated from the Festival of Trees.
For how much?
Yeah, there you go, for 10 grand.
Oh, I've bought one the last several years. It's been between $300 and $500.
Really?
Really?
Which, you know, I mean, that's a lot for a Christmas tree, but it's a good cause. You can take one of your paychecks from the county.
It's $120. I'm going to forward this. Visit the Igloo Home Store.
So,
All of a sudden, it quit doing it. Quit doing everything.
I found it, Jeremy. I'll forward you the link.
No, this is what the problem is.
That would be beneficial, I think.
Yeah, I think it'd really help.
I would like it, the code to change every day though, if we could. Keep people thinking.
So it sounds like you have more history than what you should with this.
I'll bet you could.
How did you get like involved?
I just, here, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Awesome.
It's one of those, hey, Cindy, I'd love to.
Is that a deadbolt type rock?
Yeah.
So I have
And
one that I
actually,
use.
you have to be careful because you have 3 different people going up there. Like your electrical,
Empty baggie.
TV, that have access to that also.
Are you talking about the gate that goes up to the radar tower?
The radar towers and the,
This,
Rocky Mountain Power, because they have access up
they
there.
go through the gun
Yeah. Up.
range?
The gun range. Up, they go through the gun range.
Yes, so you're meaning a lock at the gate for the gun range, a lock at the other gate. Is that what you're meaning?
Is there another? Is it working? From the gun range. Back.
No, there's the gun range gate, and then there's a gate on the end of Mahogany Ridge Road. I thought the Mahogany Ridge Road, you open that and the road goes up to the radar towers. I didn't think you went through the gun range to get to the radar towers. Oh, I didn't know that. And maybe that's how they've always accessed it.
Last time I went up there, and the key was busted off or turned it in, there's a lock. Anyway.
So I don't know if that works, but I have a lock that we use on Airbnb, and you can program time frames and days, and you can put like 200 different codes in there.
But yours is tied to the internet,
But it has to be connected to the internet.
and that's why I don't, when I researched this one, it did say that,
If they had internet.
If we had internet, then you could change the code from here, which would be really nice.
well, I actually think the old folks' home's close enough.
So how does
Oh, that's
the,
probably true. We could
how
probably
does
use
the
their
search and
way.
rescue get changed?
Or the search and rescue.
Search and
Yeah.
rescue
Do
change.
they have just a code on the door?
But they go manually change it, I think. They must, because it's not Wi-Fi, I don't think. We should ask, I guess.
And I don't think it changes much.
Okay, we're a little bit late getting started on our work session, but let's go ahead and get started. We will start with the election canvass from our November 8th election. Here's all the documents. You probably have all received many emails from folks asking that we review specific records related to the election. That's what this is. So I just looked through it. If you want to kind of glance through it. A couple of notes. We had voter turnout of about 70%, which I think is really good, especially on a non-presidential election year. But for the members of the public that are watching, if you didn't vote and were part of that 30%, I hope you vote on the next election. Anything of note?
Just our pure letters, I mean, you can tell how many people did it. Our signatures didn't match, no signatures. I say about not even 10%.
How does a signature not match? I don't understand.
If you come on in, now we'll show you.
Okay.
Do you want me to give you an example?
We're inviting anyone and
Signs up
everyone.
besides them.
Yeah, like missionaries.
No, I had a guy at work that said he got caught, but he calls his wife after he goes to work, oh, I forgot to sign it, and just vote, we vote for the same, so go ahead and vote, and had his wife sign it, and they looked at it and they caught it, and they're like, that's voter fraud, you can't
And
do
some are
that.
very, very, very obvious, and then missionaries that are out, but I FaceTimed him, and he told me to do this, so I just signed his name, that's a no-go, so a lot of that. There was about 5 missionaries that did that, so. Can't do that, no.
Gotta actually sign it.
Husbands and wives sign each other's,
Well, I think that's one of the ways we try to keep our elections secure, and appreciate you guys for reviewing that and trying to ensure that we have a good, secure, and accurate election.
So
I
do
know
we
there's a
we
lot of
count
work
our
that goes
votes as
into
they
that.
come in, or do we count on?
yes, we start the minute they come in and we process every day. We could process up to 50, up to, one day we did 700, and 700 to 800. So, and we have a new cool toy that we just, it slices them open, the ballots open, and it was fabulous. It was a game changer. We got help from the
Just not having to
state.
manually open them.
We got help from the state for that. They reimbursed us buying that machine, and it was awesome.
Cindy, have we had any issues with the company we use for the ballots? I know that Iron County had
Yes,
some issues, but.
Leslie was on a mission to find out who Iron County used, but I haven't talked to her about it. 'Cause I'm just coming off vacation, and she was gone all last week.
But we didn't really have any kind of mailing issues or anything?
No. In fact, we go with Runbeck, and they trucked in our ballots. So they dropped them at the Salt Lake, Maine on October 18th, and we got them literally the next day. My ballot was in the mail on the 19th. So it cut down 3 to 4 days trucking them in from
Well,
Arizona.
you gotta find out who Iron County uses, but I think it'd be awesome to give their elections officials a call and say, hey, FYI, these guys are good.
And he did say on the news he will not use that company ever again.
Yeah.
Because this is twice now for them, so.
We're like 90-something% mail-in ballot, aren't we?
Very good, very high percentage. And everybody doesn't like it, squawks about it, but I would like them to come in and watch our process, because I think we run a very good process.
Thank you.
And we would like suggestions if we don't.
So what's it gonna cost us if we have to go back to some, a hybrid? Because they talked about that.
You'd have to get all your, I would think, hundreds and thousands of dollars. Because you have to get all your election equipment again. Because we have 3 scanners now, 4 express vote by mail. You'd have to get everything.
Well, what happened to the machines we had? The ones where we
We
came in
had?
here?
Gosh, I almost
Yeah,
lost
had.
I don't
We
know.
traded them into another
You
county.
almost lost.
Remember, they came and picked them up.
So,
Oh, trade
And I
them?
don't-
We do not have any.
Okay.
You might be looking at the wrong numbers.
'Cause
I would like to get one more scanner, but at 7, I sent out 7,437 ballots. Right now, it can handle 3 scanners. So if we get up to 10,000 or plus, I think we need 4 scanners. And that's when I put out to different counties and try to get the scanner that we have, the DS 200s, and see if they're done, and we could possibly buy it from different counties.
Don't let me forget.
Okay.
Yeah, election equipment unfortunately is very, very expensive.
And the state sometimes does reimbursements for that also. so.
Because that may happen. May happen. I like the double system, being able to mail it in or come in and sit at the voting booth. That's me. And I know the older people are the ones that really like to be able to come in and do their ballot in person, showing their ID. And I like that too. Sure easy to do it the other way.
And times are changing, but it's easy and
Yeah.
I would just invite people
As
to
soon
come
as
in
they paint
and
their
watch the
foundation,
process.
All right.
Very good. Any questions for Cindy?
It's over there with Matt
Oh,
right now. So I can come in and look at it anytime.
when we're processing, yeah, and it's,
No, I meant
oh,
that in.
yes, I'll have it at
We
the,
use for
I'm
our,
gonna hang it up, but you'll be on the website.
makes it here.
All right.
Otherwise, floor patch too.
And that's all we had that were invalid?
Well, these are, no, we've had about 10% come back.
Have you?
What do you mean
So we
come
had
back?
about, I think, about 170 some odd cure letters go out. And these are letters that
Oh,
either
to
I
cure it.
emailed, I sent them a letter, or we
Phoned them.
literally phoned and said, watch for this in your email, and they just didn't
Okay.
comply in time.
Okay,
So these are the ones we have left over.
okay. So do we have any that did not, I mean, I know we did have, but how many, or percentage, or how many do you think we had that people didn't sign, or they didn't sign their own, or
We got about
invalid?
170, so 170, and then we got, what, 7,000 in, so my brain's not working, but I will get back to it.
Okay, that's fine.
We had quite a few that came back without the dates, that they couldn't, I couldn't use it, because the dates were too late.
Oh, okay. And it had to be postmarked the day before, correct?
The
That's
7th.
good
The
And I just
7th.
wish people would get a little bit
This one.
educated on
Went that
their
way.
dates and their times and
Yeah, because everybody thinks that they can postmark it on that last day.
and they,
They can't anymore, so.
the
that's-
only time that they did that is pre-COVID, and
Mm-hmm.
they let it go to the election day, so.
All right, okay. All right,
All right,
sounds good.
thank you.
Thank you.
You gotta follow it around.
Are you looking for this?
No, you can.
Robert will be here, but he'll be a little bit late, so you can get his if you want after.
Yeah.
Can you grab that?
At the end.
I can stick it in my thing if you
Oh,
want.
okay,
Is that
great,
right?
that'd be great. Cool.
We'll get
Did
back
you
to
give me
Are
another
you
one?
good with that, Matt?
Did you give me another one?
Yeah, I'll take good care of it.
You gave me one here, and then there's another one sitting in my desk. I don't need it,
Okay.
unless there's a change.
No.
Budget work session, we had a budget work session last night. I think we came to final resolution on that. I know we're still pending a couple of items to be added into Cassell, correct? And then once that's done, we'll have the final budget, which will be posted tomorrow morning for the public to view. Yeah, we've got to have that done today.
Mine's done, but it just barely got to her.
Is it in Cassell?
No, I have to do all that. She has to do.
Okay, so we still gotta update Cassell and then get it posted. Any questions from the commission on the budget after what we talked about last night? Everybody comfortable?
I'm just sad, I wanted you to look at it one last time.
Yeah,
I think we ought to.
I would love to do that. So here's what we're gonna have to do is look at it via email
Yeah.
because we won't be able to see it in here. Because we have to have those updates made so we can see the bottom line, I guess, at this
I
point.
do have a question on it. On the P card, are we getting any kind of rebate from that?
Yes,
And
we have
where-
a balance.
Huh?
We have a balance.
No, I'm saying, do we get the rebate for our expenses that go in, that everybody uses that P card? We're supposed to be getting a certain amount of money coming back to the
It's
county.
just sitting there. Nothing's been requested to have it come back.
So we have to ask for it.
I
Why?
have to find out what, I don't know, I didn't set up the T card, so I'll have to look.
Okay, all
But I
right.
do not know there's a balance there.
Okay, yeah, there should be. He was telling me today on that.
Is it a large amount or we were?
Nah, $2,000 is
Couple thousand dollars.
Yeah, and then one of the things on that is they were saying with that P card that if we were to use the P card more, of course we'll get more back, but the P card could, and anyway, we're gonna have to sit down. They're gonna come up and show us a little bit more on it, because if we have accounts at different locations, it'd be better for us to use the P card than it would be to have the accounts open. So, just as a thought.
I think a couple of, maybe while we have a few minutes, let's just talk really a little bit about some lessons learned from our budgeting process, so we can think about next year and how it'll look. Because I tried to make a couple of notes based on our discussion last night. I'm gonna maybe email that out to the commission. I think one of the things that, and now hopefully this will be a much easier process, we've got a good spreadsheet for wages and benefits. I think knowing what that is early on in the process is going to be key. So I think next year we need to have those numbers ready to go by mid to late August.
I can't get them all, that's the problem.
You can get everything but insurance increases. And that's fine. Let's get everything but insurance increases in, so all we have to do is say insurance is going up 3% and put the number in. But I think having that ready early will be key, because frankly, the bulk of our budget is employee wages and benefits. It's like $3.5, close to $4 million of our total $8 million budget. So it's a big chunk. Another thing I think is we need to, between now and our next budgeting session, have some good discussions and figure out our employee wage change procedure, I guess you could say, and talk about the STEP program that we have, whether we're going to put that in place, how that's going to look, if we're going to do a merit-based increase. We probably ought to have some criteria together for that before next budget season. I think that would be helpful. Any other thoughts on budgeting, anything that you can think of that we ought to have ready for next year?
Justification for whatever it is they're requesting.
What's that?
Justifications. Just continue to do the justification. If they want a salary increase or any of that kind of stuff, give us the reason why for all employees.
A timeline would be nice for people like me that don't, well, like this year, I didn't know the process. And all of a sudden, a timeline would, or a deadline would jump up on me that Leslie would tell me about that I had never known. And so a timeline of expectations would be helpful for me or anyone in the future.
And I just think we ought to have the asks previous to decision on COLAs and stuff.
You did, but maybe we can pick a month that those are due also.
Yeah.
Because if you have
We did,
2 months ago.
we did, but we didn't look at it in that fashion, I don't think.
Any other thoughts? I'm just making notes of this. I think we'll send it out just so we remember for next year, because a year is a long time to remember some of this
Yeah, it
stuff.
is.
Oh, it's gonna be stuck with me for a year.
Leslie and I can also work together to come up with some things that we can do better together, working together in communication.
Well, and didn't we talk about the quarterly budget assessments for each of the departments, where we sit down with the department heads and
I think that would be
maybe
huge
elected
too.
officials, just to make sure we're on budget and tracking correctly? That would make our last quarter really easy, I think, budget.
I think
All revenues?
one other, and that might be good, is in the budgeting process, I would like to see more of a vision of what people want for their departments. So for instance, if they have a long-range plan, it would be nice to see what their long-range plan is. I mean, the fire department came into us with a long-range plan last year, and he's been just working on that. But I'd like to see some of the other departments do the same thing. Unless
Maybe
they don't
including
have any.
their long-range plan and maybe goals for their department.
That's right.
I think you're right, it would be helpful for us to know, when a department is nearing that point where they think they need another employee, full-time or part-time, so they can come in and say, right now, we're able to get by, but by next year, we will likely need another employee, and this is why, and that kind of thing. I agree.
I mean, if we all of a sudden need another appraiser, or something like that, give us reasons. I mean, not give us reason. Give us a vision of what you want to do, whichever one it might be, planning, public works, snowfall.
Any other thoughts for
And
next year's budget session?
After going through the spreadsheet with the sheriff's department just a little bit ago, I realized one more thing that we can improve on the spreadsheet also, so I'll get that done so that next year it's completely ready and sharpened up.
I think it would be helpful too if our departments were able to say to us, this is where I saved the county money this year. We were gonna do this, but we were able to do this, instead, and it saved this much money,
And maybe even highlighting, I love that idea, and also highlighting the grants that we've been able to bring in,
Yeah.
or that they have been able to bring in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So maybe call it a report from the department heads on successes and achievements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not cram them all together too close.
We spread them out, Blaine, a long ways this time.
No, I'm saying like we had them scheduled to be a half hour long or 20 minutes.
I know, which was spread out from what we've done in the
Yeah,
past.
but we may need longer than that depending on the size of the department. And their different budget categories and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's hard because the time involved is great, no matter how we do it. And we probably could spend 3 hours with every department head really learning and asking questions.
I mean, if there's needs that they have never asked us about because they haven't thought we would ever approve anything, maybe they need to start asking us for those, some sort of a plan. I mean, if they think they're gonna need a vehicle, hey, okay, Matt,
Well, maybe we should be meeting with our department heads before we start that process and have a meeting with each of our department heads and take a couple of hours before they come in for their half hour, and then we're already,
Yeah, I will say, so I met with Boyd, and to be honest, that was the only department that I met with specifically to talk about budget before, but we spent probably 2.5 hours going through his budget and talking about it. I was much better prepared for the budget meeting because of it, and I think he was too, because I asked questions, kind of got him thinking, so I think that's a wonderful idea. We probably ought to take the time to meet with those departments that were over.
I asked, also, after speaking to a couple of heads of departments today, they wondered why the meetings had to be held in front of other people. Some people held back saying things they would have said if others weren't present. Is it always?
It's a public
like
meeting,
that?
and it has to be a public meeting.
kind of like this one is. This
But,
work
you know, to
session.
Matt's point, if we did meet individually, that could be an opportunity for them to raise some of those concerns, at least with a commissioner. It won't be the whole group necessarily, but that's an
That would be
opportunity.
great. This person that I talked to, they said they would have loved that.
Because
they wanted-
then we shouldn't be afraid to share.
Then we can have shorter ones.
These are all
It's not
wonderful
It's
ideas.
not comfortable, but it's transparent.
Yeah, you're right. That's a very good way of describing it. Any other thoughts on
Just going along with the same one,
budgeting?
same process. If we're looking towards the future, we've got to have a plan. Because right now, all we're doing is taking care of problems.
I feel like it went smoother this year than last year, though.
'Cause it's been a big help, I think.
The first year that Robert and I did it,
No.
we were still on the 31st, the night of the 31st, basically,
December 31st.
December 31st, arguing over the budget. So, the fact that we're done this early is positive in my mind.
We're not done yet.
Well, we will be shortly. Any other thoughts?
If I could just add, for Leslie's benefit, now that she has some people that have gone through this process with her and have fumbled through it with, making a few mistakes, she will be better capable to tell us what she needs from us, and we will be better at being able to give that to her, because we were all new this year. When I say me, her, the treasurer. So I think we have a better help next year if things seem smoother, because we all know what we're doing. That's my help.
Did we in the budget this year include in there the interest on different, whatever it might be that we did include it this year?
Yeah, there's an interest line item.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was or not. That's one thing we had to think about.
I think, and maybe this just goes back to a lot of the things that we've already talked about in terms of preparation, but I do feel like we've caused a lot of reworking of things over the process, whether it's re-entering wage and benefits, or re-entering this, or re-entering that. And I think, we need to find a way to reduce that. That's a lot of extra work for Leslie, to go back in and have to update all of the wages and salaries after we've, gone through them multiple times, because they've probably already been updated 2 or 3 times. So, I think that's something we need to be cognizant of and try to figure out a good way to reduce that, so that we're not, that's a lot of time and energy spent that we don't need to do if we can. Now, maybe there's a way we could do that. Leslie, spitballing here, maybe we take the spreadsheet we've been working off of for wage and benefits, and instead of going in and putting all those amounts into the individual departments initially, maybe we just put one line item somewhere in the budget with all of our wages and benefits initially to get our total. And when we're done reworking that, we could go back and actually put them in. I don't know, that's a thought, but
It's a great plan.
maybe there's a way we can do that so that we're not having to rework it over and over and over. Because there's got to be some efficiencies we can gain, I guess.
Yes.
So. Okay, any other thoughts on budget before we move on? So, Leslie will email out a copy of the budget for quick review. To be clear, we have to have that posted tomorrow morning, correct?
Or we need to move our budget.
Or we got to move the budget hearing. So let's plan to post it tomorrow morning. Hopefully we've all seen it enough times that we're comfortable with it. And keep in mind, if there is something that you think needs to be adjusted, it could be a budget amendment if we need to after it's been adopted. I think I would rather do that than try to push the budget hearing back further unless there's something glaringly problem. But unless anybody has an objection, I would say let's post it. You can email it out, but let's post it immediately tomorrow when it's ready. And we can work out anything afterwards. So don't wait for us to say, yes, this looks good,
Okay.
is what I'm getting at. Anybody have a concern with that? Okay.
updated spreadsheet also. so
Saw
if you
that
catch-
just a minute
You
ago.
might catch something on there that you could bring up with me.
Okay. I don't know that I would catch it on there, to be honest, myself. Maybe others are better than I at catching that. Seen too many numbers here to know.
Well, one thing that-
But I know you've reviewed it with the department heads at this point, right?
Yes.
So they're clear on it. We've made the changes that we discussed last night.
Corrections came in, and if anybody needed, most of them were correct by the time they got to the heads.
Okay.
The sheriff's department was the tricky one because our spreadsheet's not created to match what we did with them. And so if you look at that, you'll see that what I ended up doing after talking to Leslie was basically wiping out the 6% section, only on those that were getting the 6% plus a step, because it wasn't created to allow for that to happen. So I wiped out the 6%, and that 6% is now sitting in the wage that carried over so it wouldn't screw up the benefits and stuff. And so that part was a little tricky, and Leslie and I just came up with the best solution, and that's what I did to it. And then I met with Jim also to make sure that I was thinking correctly on how I should do it, and now I feel like it's accurate. It did take me till like this afternoon to get it done because of all the interruptions to it. And maybe not have
You know,
the
that-
budget right with the
that-
commission meeting.
That brings up a good point. You know, we may have to also dedicate time on the calendar and say, look, during this time, this budget is of the utmost priority, we're gonna get it done. And I don't care if somebody has something else going on, they can wait until it's done. So that's something to consider
And
too.
I did have to push some people away today and say, I will help you tomorrow, I'll help you tomorrow. But when Garrett came in, I don't say that.
Thank you.
Because it was all about commission stuff.
Okay. Leslie, anything else budget-wise?
Yes, a little work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work that has been put on this. It's been a lot, I know that. Okay, that's all we have on our agenda for our work session.
Oh, I thought we had one more.
I threw that opt-out policy if you want to.
Oh, it wasn't on this agenda, but it was on the...
It was on the original.
Because we've already announced it to employees. I thought it was done, but we've changed, we just corrected a little bit on it, but it was in the packet.
I do
Yeah,
think it is important to get this signed because it does impact the budget greatly.
I agree.
And so,
We don't have this as an action item though, do we?
no.
So we could sign it though and ratify it at the next meeting, because it ought to be an action item for a meeting.
You have discussed it thoroughly. Have you looked it over yet?
I have, and I talked to Robert about it last night
Okay.
as well. Just,
Were there still
So were there
concerns?
concerns? Because I had some.
I think that the major concern was resolved from Robert's perspective, but I'll let him speak to that.
So do we want to talk about that now? Over to you.
It was largely resolved last meeting. My concern really related to the policy with respect to couples where both work at the county and one can opt out and the other can stay in the program. But given the fact that the employee pays the majority of the cost for the family plan, it's not a concern from my perspective.
Oh, gotcha.
Which one? I'm not quite following that. They're not fault.
I think the employee pays we only pay a portion of the premium.
Right, right.
And when they elect the family plan, they pay a larger portion of the premium. So the fact that the other spouse doesn't opts out and receives that payment isn't a concern to me. If we were paying the entire premium for the family plan, I would say we shouldn't allow that in the policy. But because we're not, I'm not as concerned about it.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we're paying the 90% of the wage, of
The
the
premium.
insurance premium. And you're concerned that we've got the one employee that is paying it for the family, and the other one decides to opt out. So you're saying we shouldn't be doing that, or we should?
I was concerned about it, but I'm
You're
comfortable with it.
Okay, all right. And I've got a question on this policy, is there is no rebate for opting out of dental or optical insurance. Why aren't we offering that too?
How much are they a month?
The optical is minimal.
Because we don't pay very much of that, right?
Yeah, there's, we don't,
1,500 and,
We do pay 90% on the dental.
yeah.
I was incorrect a
lot.
couple months ago when I said 50. I was looking at different numbers in the book. I looked into it further and talked to the guy, our administrative guy, and he said we do pay 90. And so that can be re-looked at and changed, but that's where we're at right now. Optical is only $1 a person, no matter which plan they pick. I don't even know why we pay that much, but it's minimal.
I think this needs to stay health insurance. I don't think we need to
But
bring
then you-
dental and
Most of them don't offer
other
dental.
stuff in it. I don't see that as being worthwhile for us or for the employee, frankly.
Aren't
And
we
it benefits
paying-
them to have double coverage in those two areas.
And I think it could be revisited next year, but the current budget that I've reviewed, the opt-outs is related to medical, because that's where the biggest expense is, and that would swing the budget quite a far way if someone has verbally said, I'm opting out, but then they don't opt out, and so that's why I think we need to have.
Yeah, we're too late in the
We need to
process
have
to
it
change
signed.
that. I agree.
And there are some that when they do opt out of health, they opt out of dental also, just because they don't need it. But there are some that see the benefit of keeping. And we're seeing that happen more than not.
Dental coverage typically isn't great anyway, and if you can have double, it's better than,
Thank you. Oh, this must be a lesson.
okay. Any other comments on the opt-out program? Or concerns about it?
When there's a qualifying event or change in family status, under 4A, there was a question I had. How, because it almost seems like it's a little bit discretionary in that
No.
one. In
The
A it
insurance,
is.
the insurance company controls this. We don't.
Well, this is our policy though.
I understand that, but a qualifying event is controlled by the insurance
Right,
company,
but
so
this
they have to
for-
meet the qualifying event criteria.
This 4A does not say that.
It says,
Loss or
the
significant.
employee may enroll in the county's health insurance plan in the future during open enrollment or for a qualifying event / change in family status.
Right.
But those qualifying events are controlled by the health insurance company, not by the county.
Because you've got in here, loss or significant change in the medical coverage of the employee's spouse or parent. Okay.
Which is what the insurance company would likely say as well. I'm sure that's from them. Basically,
I
if
can
you
go
have...
for a year and we can try it, but I don't think that's going to be, that might be a problem.
So for example, so the policy requires that you can only opt out if a spouse also has coverage. And so for me, if my spouse doesn't have coverage, I can't even think about the opt-out policy as far as, the benefit and so forth. So let's say that an employee has a spouse that now loses coverage, they don't qualify for the opt-out anymore, and so that would be a qualifying event.
Right, I understand that.
Which would also qualify them to join the insurance through the insurance company. Yeah, they have to have a qualifying event as determined by the insurance company,
Okay,
not by us.
okay, it's just written
But
in
did
our
these
policy.
examples come from the insurance company?
I would hope so.
That's
This
where
Did
example
they?
came from the city. Morgan City gave this to Leslie, and she tweaked it to fit us.
And it does say some examples of qualifying events include but not limited to.
Right, there should be more.
I think ultimately, again, the insurance company is going to regulate this, and if they determine it's a qualifying event, then this kicks into place. If they determine it's not, this doesn't happen.
Well, the
Right,
only
I
thing
just
I'd
wouldn't
say,
give an example that they don't include.
That's.
okay,
that's a
say
good
for
point.
instance, a person that's age 65 has to apply for Medicare, doesn't matter what. And say they only want to do Medicare, and it's mid-year. According to this, they can go and opt out of our coverage if they wanted to during the middle of the year. That is not a qualifying event, even though according to this, it
Well,
does say.
no, this doesn't say they can do that. And maybe, okay.
It doesn't
Well,
say
what
they
if
can
we
elect-
just amended it and removed all the language about this and just said a qualifying event as determined by the county's insurance provider?
That sounds good.
Is that
And Medicare,
okay?
yeah, I think that that's good. And the Medicare example, that's not a needs-based, or, that's just an age.
That's
base.
right. That's what I'm saying here, is that one could make it to, if we use that example under A, that example I gave could occur.
But are you concerned about people opting into this mid-year or opting, or
Out.
getting coverage?
Opting into coverage.
Into
Maybe.
insurance coverage?
Yeah, if they, by chance, maybe all of a sudden,
Well, if they opt into insurance
but
coverage,
your
it doesn't
example was
matter.
the opposite
We're
of that.
required to do that.
Your example was the opposite. You're saying
Yeah.
someone turns 65,
Right.
they now have Medicare coverage.
and they want to opt out
Okay,
of our coverage,
So they'd have to
and then they get the $300.
then wait till the end of the year. What this provision is intended to say is if you have coverage from another source, and for whatever reason, there's this change of events and it's a qualifying event, then you can, notwithstanding the fact that it's mid-year, get insurance under our program, even though you previously opted out.
But we'd be required by law to give them insurance mid-year, even if they opted out, if they have a qualifying event, right?
Right.
If they opt
Yeah,
out,
I don't
take
know the
the
answer.
smaller, it's less money for us.
Yeah, if they opt out, it's less money for us, so what do we
Yeah,
care?
opting out would be fine. Opting in, if they were out.
So are you just gonna
So-
change 4 to say for a qualifying event?
Change in family status as determined by the county's health insurance
That's
provider.
correct.
And then we remove the rest
And
of
that
it.
would be fine with me.
Okay.
And that was the only,
So.
Two items I
Really,
have.
After we do the new one?
Well,
Or do I bring it back to the next meeting?
has to come back to the next meeting to be ratified, but we will sign it now and just ratify it at the next one. And then I think we'll be good on it. Okay, anything else work session wise? You know what we could do during the work session here? While we've got a couple of minutes, let's go through any commissioner comments. Those are not action items and can be done anytime. Commissioner Fackrell, do you have any comments? Now's your chance. I'm not coming back to you at the end of the meeting.
that's fine, you don't have to. I've got too many things going through my head right now.
Okay, anything you want to share?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, Commissioner Newton, I will be leaving, and I don't know if there are any questions on the action items.
That's a great.
I did send out an email that kind of consolidated my emails that were sent piecemeal throughout the day, and so,
Okay, any questions for Garrett?
Are we able to have an executive session or anything without you here?
Do we need one?
I would like one.
with regard to what?
Potential litigation?
I don't know that we need one, but.
Can it
Okay.
wait till our next session, our next
Fine.
meeting? Are you okay with that?
I'm okay.
I mean, I would rather have him here if we're gonna discuss that.
Yeah,
for
that's what I
sure.
thought too, because we need him here,
Yeah,
so.
okay. As far as commissioner comments, I don't have anything.
Unless we go out for 5 minutes now and do it.
Well,
He needs to leave.
yeah, I think he needs to leave. I don't think that'll work. Do you have any
No
comments? Okay. All right, we will break from our work session and we'll convene our commission meeting here in about 10 minutes. Garrett,
be good with it. All right.
And the reason I have this is because we feel as a county need to adopt the resolution. So this is the full resolution. And it appoints either or as the chair.
Or two of us.
But they want two women to be able to transact business that comes up with regardless of culture, performance as they can do, entertain, anyway. And so
that makes sense.
just choose whoever else that you think.
Did you get my email?
Which one?
The one on this?
I did. Did you get my response?
No.
And I copied it into the email I just sent to consolidate all that. So,
What?
On what?
On this agreement.
Oh, on fire.
Yeah, because, number one, there's no provision penalty. I mean, there is a provision there, but there is no clause for us to be able to get out of this early.
there is, if you don't,
Because I can find it.
well,
You're saying there is a pre?
There is not.
to get
There
out.
is nothing. There's nothing in there that gives us the option to be able to get out of this early. So if we get $500,000, pay for everything up,
Okay.
they're gonna, you know, it's not gonna be the balance that's on the sheet. It may be a different balance because there's nothing in there that's on the sheet.
I wanted to tell you something.
Well, I just want to pay off.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Do you know
It sure
why
would be nice because that's a
this
high
building is
percent
the
of interest.
Memorial
Very
Police
high.
Courthouse, Dickens Memorial Courthouse?
Well, we
Because they use the
might have
Veterans
it.
Memorial Fund that they had built up years ago.
Because let's just say, for
This is
instance,
why they have the room over here. And they used to have like twice as much space, but they were kind enough to give
and
us
then
an
we lose the
extension.
vehicle. What I'm saying is, but I don't want to lose the
Just kind
vehicle.
of, you'd like to know
So we
that.
better have something there that says we can pay the balance.
Because they did give
Not
up their
pay
living space.
another amount.
That's interesting.
Balance that's owed
And that was
on
before
it
my time,
at that point,
1957.
according to the
Wow.
amortization schedule we have. Because see, if by chance we get otherwise, we would end up paying interest on the stage there.
I think that's fine. This is the reading I'm worried about tonight, is that this resolution is signed. And we can negotiate the repayment, and get the repayment in there. We don't have to do that. Because you already resolved it.
So what we'll do is,
Listed here
it's,
in
can transact it.
And because this agreement basically tells us that if we were to go, you're saying, pay off that balance that's there, we may have to pay the interest, the rest of the interest. Yeah.
So we've
that's
got two
about-
pieces here. We've got a resolution that says we can do this, and we've got an agreement which we can still negotiate.
So as long as we can negotiate.
So we probably have to approve the resolution, and so let's go.
And then my question was more about was there any other company out there that could have built this thing for us? And is it new? Okay, so if it is new, then was there another company? Because there's 4 companies.
Yes, and he did shop. Yes.
But I talked to Boyd about this earlier after I got your email. He said, well, it's already been approved to go. If I were here in May, October 18th, that's interesting. I probably list that most of the, you know, but we're past that.
Before this process, probably.
My biggest problem is
And I talked to someone.
how are you?
That's a big way to go. Well, basically, it's about 5%, this is 5%. It gets a B. So, I mean,
No, it's not a separate days.
I would also bet you back to the consideration for somebody else. Because that's how vehicle.
You can sign it.
We can still negotiate. Is there any reason it would be smart to use one of those?
Well, I remember you talking about
Yeah, she's like, I don't see them, they're not on here. And I was like, well, they're on here, but they're being canceled. So,
Well, maybe that's.
well, it doesn't verify, so we can today, but he's got them all on.
It'll still go for me either way, right? And review them.
Could be good.
I haven't read the email yet. I gotta read it. I just saw it here.
I did. I told you about my dad.
Yeah. We were just discussing it over there. So,
I like it.
yeah, that was my big concern. Okay. Okay, so, through Garrett.
I got everything ordered.
She comes in and
Hitch.
signs this ordinance.
Okay.
And we're going to take the truck over to get the hitch on. We walk around behind it, it's got a hitch.
Extra. Gotta back up.
So then they had to restock it, it cost $60.
Yeah.
Hey, but you saved,
540.
there you go. Look at you saving money.
Win some, lose some.
What happened? What happened then?
On the vehicle, turned out it had a hitch.
Oh, it had a hitch?
Funny thing was, I told Matt ahead of time, that has a hitch.
And it's on tape.
I was in the meeting minutes and he didn't even listen to you.
I would like to know, Jared, did you send us over the copy of our local option agreement, sales tax?
Yeah, Garrett sent it to us.
You didn't send it to us.
Garrett sent it to us.
What?
Garrett sent
I
it to
didn't see
us.
it.
Let me tell you when you got it, hold on.
For the local option sales tax?
Did you find it?
No?
No? Hold on.
There it is, I got it.
Oh, okay.
Monday.
I got it.
Now it starts January 1, right?
Well,
Because that's a new quarter.
if we, no, we already did. Yeah, it started. Yeah. Well, no, the effective date is April. It's actually, we're gonna start January, it started April 1.
Oh, the quarter after.
Correct.
Did you indicate that, I can't remember now, on the interlocal, are we,
It's on Monday at
are you ready to
5:30.
move forward on it, or did you want to?
What's that?
Garrett sent
Well,
it
we're
Monday
ready to
at
discuss it
5:27.
if we want to move forward. with
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah,
I
I
don't
got it
want it
here.
to be a pressure thing. I mean, if there's things that we want to
I
discuss.
don't feel pressure, but I just didn't know if, I remember you saying something about like, care if it got pushed off further, I didn't know if.
Yeah, we just, the school boards are, it's one before the school board and they approved the $10. So, yeah, it's ready
So
for us
this
to
last
discuss.
part here, did you see it? Section 4, 2 transfer
two, so shouldn't be there.
Yeah. And so, does that take care of
Do you know where Julie went?
is that, that's all kinds of transportation? Or are you gonna designate what
Well,
it's for this one, not for the other one? I don't know where the other one is.
I would expect that provision of the code indicates that uses transportation.
But it's the same with the ramp, that's how we read it, how it says for, that there for.
I'm so illiterate on stuff like this.
But anyway, I just want to make sure that it's the correct wording that we need for that purpose. Because some of it needs to go towards trails.
As long as it doesn't stretch much of a letter.
That's what it was.
I uploaded it to OneDrive and I'm like, where to go?
Infrastructure.
Crap, they've changed their...
I really wish they got get started here.
Let's see where she's at. Get started. Shows the page number, like cool like the rest of you.
The thing is I have my work uses the call line, so yeah, it's got all the bells and whistles, so yeah, it's nice. I don't know why we don't have it as a county. We should have some nice Dolby Active user.
Yeah, right. But is it come out this size, cow? Did yours come out that size? Hey,
Again, yeah, I just, I. See me again. Yeah.
That's the full-time job. So how can I make it stay at a certain size?
Did you find anything in that?
See, look at yours.
Okay, welcome to the Morgan County Commission meeting, November 22nd, 2022. I'd like to welcome all those who are present in the meeting and those who are joining us via electronic means. We will begin the meeting with the invocation or moment of reflection and pledge of allegiance. And I typically reach out in advance for this, but I did not. Commissioner Anderson, would you mind doing that?
I got you. Thank you. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity we have to meet as a commission, meet as residents, meet as property owners, and to express the maybe concerns and thought processes we have moving forward with the county. At this time, in this time of season, we're very thankful for the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful for those who gave sacrifice and some that gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms that we enjoy today. We are grateful for this county that we live in. We're grateful for the moisture that we've received. We're grateful for the simple blessings that we have in life. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Anderson. We will move to our consent items. We have one item that is approval of the November 1st, 2022 meeting minutes. I do have a couple of updates to those minutes. on the last page under Commissioner Wilson, Melissa Freegang, her name is misspelled there.
I did not know how
But we can get you that correct spelling.
to. Thank you.
And then on our closed session, it says to discuss pending litigation and purchase of sale of new property. It should be pending litigation and purchase or sale of real property. Those were the only items I had. Anyone else have meeting minute adjustments?
Oh yeah, there was one more. Under my comments, we need to have a coordinating council, not a coordinator council.
Coordinate team.
Coordinating. That was all that and what he mentioned were all I saw.
Perfect. All right, with that, we'll look for a motion on approval of the November 1st, 2022 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to commissioner declarations of conflict of interest with any items on the agenda. Okay. Seeing none, we will now move to our public comment period. This is the opportunity for the public to address the commission. If you so desire, we'll ask that you come forward to the podium. Please state your name for the record, and please keep your comments to about 3 minutes, if you would.
I think we have a public hearing for one item on there.
We do have
Hearing later.
We do have one public hearing, which is item G13, discussion budget hearing decision on the proposed Weaver River floodplain mapping study grant. All other items are not scheduled for a public hearing, so this would be your opportunity to address the commission.
My name is Trevor Kobe. Nice to meet with you guys again. I represent the Bowman family that owns a quarter section that is surrounded by Wasatch Peaks Ranch. Our family homesteaded that property in the late 1800s, and it's been in our family ever since. We've got 4 corner monuments that were cemented in place many, many years ago that represent the 4 corners of that property. And on April 23rd of 2019, Wasatch Peaks also commissioned a survey that was recorded here at Morgan County that they actually found 3 of those corner monuments and accepted those on that survey. Later that year, in August of 2019, Wasatch Peaks surveyor recorded what are called corner reports, where they took pictures of the corners and filed those with Morgan County. In fact, if you go on Morgan County's map website to monument tie sheets, the northeast corner, which is a boundary between our properties, if you pull that up, it has the corner report that was filed by Wasatch Peaks surveyor. And then on November 21st, 2021, the Morgan County surveyor recorded a survey plat that accepted 3 of the 4 corner markings on the homestead. And the surveyor specifically said, "These monuments have been in place for many decades and have been relied upon for improvements within the quarter section. 3 of the 4 monuments around the quarter section, shown hereon, are accepted as being section and quarter section monuments. Their use and relative position match topographic calls and courses in the original field notes." So we had a survey by Wasatch Peaks, follow-up corner record reports by Wasatch Peaks that identified those corner monuments. We had an official survey by Morgan County surveyor that recognized 3 of them, and regarding the 4th one, the surveyor, Morgan County surveyor said the 4th monument has not been accepted as a quarter section monument because its relative position to the 3 others do not match topographic calls and courses in the original field notes. Notwithstanding the historic use of this monument, further research is warranted before determining its quality as a quarter section monument or a reference monument. So we had that background, and then we discovered after the fact, without any notification from Wasatch Peaks, that on June 1st, Wasatch Peaks filed an amended survey, which contradicted their April survey. And this survey rejected all 4 historical corner monuments on the homestead. They didn't notify us of that new survey, and we actually discovered that by accident in trying to do research with respect to that property. Our concern is that you've got 2 items before you today, plat amendments or new subdivision plats that appear to rely on a new position for that northeast corner that does not match previous surveys that have been filed both from Wasatch Peaks both with Morgan County Surveyor. That northeast corner monument has since been destroyed, and there's been work that's happened past that monument that's caused destruction and other concerns with our property, including blocking the road that we use to access that property. And so what we'd like to do is just see this resolved before we accept and record plats. We believe that it's important that these plats accurately reflect the corner monuments that have been accepted by Morgan County Surveyor, and would request that either postpone or deny this until that issue is resolved. Thanks.
My name is Rich Koski. I'm a resident of Trappers Point in Mountain Green. I'm here to speak on item number 11, the final plat approval for Frontier Estates. We understand upon recommendation of the Morgan Fire Marshal that a secondary access egress road rated to support a 75,000-pound fire vehicle may be a condition of approval tonight. One solution under consideration is a paved gravel or decomposed granite road meeting the fire code standards, which would run the entire length, which is about 1,240 feet of the southern boundary of Trappers Point in the northern boundary of the proposed Warner West development. There's an alternative that would be a secondary access road that would connect from the future road in the Warner West development that would connect into Frontier Estates. And we as residents of Trapper Point, that is our preference. But should the Morgan County Commission tonight approve the road along the north-south boundary of Warner West and Trappers Point, we respectfully request that the road be definitely designated temporary and return to its natural state immediately upon completion of the connection of Frontier Estates and Warner West via the road that was proposed in their concept plan. I'm sure the developer would like that as well. I would assume no homeowners would want, an existing gravel or decomposed granite road in their backyard. We also request that this road, if it's approved, that it be for emergency access only, possibly gated with a breakaway gate for emergency access, and that no other motorized traffic, including construction equipment, cars, trucks, motorcycles, or off-highway vehicles be using that road during the construction. We strongly feel that the temporary north-south boundary road would adversely impact property values. It would run across the back, adjacent to the backyards of 11 homeowners in Trappers Point. I spoke to 8 of 10 people that have provided me signing off on this same letter. I'll leave those with the commission. I also have copies of my letter. And, of course, our proposal and our wish would be that the developments be co-developed if they get approved, and that the access egress road goes through the Warner West development connected per the concept plan that was presented to the county commission a few weeks ago. So I have copies for each of you, copy for Joshua. And one other item, Kathy Hawes, who lives in the Trappers Point neighborhood, asked me to leave with you a report from Darren Rasmussen that was dated in 2020 when there was first talk of development of this neighborhood regarding landslide issues and impact on the Dry Creek bed. I will leave this so that you have copies of it. And our main concern there is that memories are often very short. We'd like to see how the county commission or permitting or builders themselves will be held to compliance with recommendations of the state regarding any structures to be built on those properties, I know in the plat plan, there are some restrictions on where they can build on several of those lots, but I think any approval should spell out who's going to make sure that the builders, the developer complies with what the state recommends. That's all I have. Yeah. Should I just leave these copies on the table here, or?
You can
And
just
hand
hand
them
them, you
over.
can hand them there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ben Nelson, and I am representing the Morgan VFW and American Legion veterans, and also the Sons of the Utah Pioneers tonight. What we would like to have is a waiver of the $100 fee for the rental of the auditorium. You know, we're right across from the auditorium, and we have used it quite a bit in the past. All of the veterans organization are nonprofit, and we would use them primarily twice a year for our summer and our winter social. But there have been other times, particularly during COVID, when we started meeting together again, we used the auditorium so that we could space appropriately for our meetings. A little bit of background on what we do. We feel that we're a service community, or service to the community and to others outside of the community. We conduct honor guards for all deceased veterans that are being buried in Morgan County in any cemetery. We don't charge for that. There are some that do, we don't. It's a service to the family, and it doesn't matter if they're from Morgan or not. We conduct an honor guard for them. We also have a lot of activities in the schools. We go into the middle school once a year and present to each class, well, not each class, about 21 classes in each of the schools. We have veterans in the classes that spend some time talking to them about honoring their country, honoring their flag, service to the community, just to make them stronger people and to make our county stronger. In the high school, we provide color guards. We did for their graduation. And also for the scouts, we provide an Eagle Scout with a special ceremony where we present him a flag that is flown over the United States Capitol. And we don't, our money comes from the dues that we have. We don't have any fundraisers at all. And so having to pay $100 each time we want to use the auditorium would be kind of a pretty bad expense for us. With respect to the Sons of the Utah Pioneers, right now they are meeting in a ward cultural hall for a monthly luncheon, and twice a year that includes spouses. And we used to meet at Larry's, but now that is gone. We meet in the cultural hall. However, we are going to try having some meetings in the evening, which would include spouses, and we can't use the churches on a Monday night. So we would also, if possible, it wouldn't necessarily be a Monday night, but have that as a consideration as a nonprofit organization as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. We do have you on our agenda for our second action item. We're going to finish up our public comment, and then we'll come back and make a vote on your item. So we'll return to that shortly. Come on up.
Like, wait. I'm Mary Everly. I am Trappers Point area. I'm one of the 11 homes that will be on the Warner's West development. We do have some concerns on the access / egress road. It's been called both an access and an egress. We've never had anybody in our backyards to measure. A lot of we homeowners pushed our homes as far back as we could on our property. So if it, depending on how close it is to the fence line, we have very small backyards. So depending on if that road is paved, then we could have traffic right under our windows. Double frontage. I have a property attorney that I talk to, and it does devaluate our homes. So if it was kept in place, that's a concern of ours. Also, we've been told that they would build it up so that it would drain. We've not been told who would maintain it. Or if the developer will take the time for proper drainage. We have $15,000 worth of rock work. If it's built up and my rocks are down here and we get a normal snowfall, it could compromise my rock work. Who would have access to it and how? I've been told it's just for emergency egress. And after all of this, can we guarantee that any and all of our concerns are documented and recorded for future discussion? Because that seems to be what we do here, Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no additional public comment, we will move on to our action items. We'll start with action item number 1, Mr. Sean Beckstrom. Change on airport lease to a business name. Is Mr. Beckstrom here?
I don't think he is, but I'll move to approve it.
This is a pretty simple thing. He's asked to change the lease from his personal name to an LLC, of which he is 100% the owner. So we have a motion to approve the change and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving to the second action item, Mr. Nelson, who's addressed us. First off, I just want to say, Mr. Nelson, thank you for all that you do and all of the other veterans. We appreciate you and all that you have done and continue to do for our community and for our country. And I certainly support the veterans and both the veterans and the Sons of Utah Pioneers utilizing the facility at no charge. I'll look for a motion on that.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second.
He was second, I moved it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Jared Anderson, Commissioner Anderson, and Lydia, our Recreation Department Director. This is review and approval of an interlocal agreement with the Morgan School District and Morgan County.
So I think we've been in discussions on this agreement. It might be a full year when we first initially started it, but without going into detail of the agreement, it really helps us understand what the Recreation Department use is on school facilities and how we're using them and what payments there might be for from the school staff to whether it's take out garbage, whether it's electrical costs, whatever the costs are to use their facilities. We want to make sure that that was looked at and understood what we need to do and how we need to pay for that. I know Garrett's not here, but Garrett and Lydia and I and Matt's been involved a little bit too, but we spend a lot of time on this agreement. I think the key, and I'm still scrolling up, this is a 180-page document. Do you guys have the page number for that agreement? I'm getting there, but there is one location where it says the usage of the outdoor fields and indoor facilities would be $10 an hour. I know that was a discussion we had and what that looked like, and I know for our outdoor facility, for example, at Kent Smith Park, we charge $10 an hour to use those fields. So I believe this went before the school board, their last board meeting. Is that right, Lydia? And they approved the agreement.
So I actually don't have the agreement in our packet, but I have the
It's
email
not in the
copy.
packet.
It's not in the packet.
No,
Okay.
but I do have the email copy and have looked at that.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Anderson or for Lydia regarding the agreement?
I sent you guys my responses for that agreement. I agree with the agreement, just the other parts I didn't, so we have to,
And-
we'll do that, an amendment later on that.
And did you see Garrett's responses to?
Because we talked about it, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with Morgan School District, or between Morgan School District and Morgan County.
Second?
A motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We will move to our assessor, Gwen Rich, for Board of Equalization adjustments.
This should have been on the consent agenda, but
Yeah, it should have been.
it's not. So do you have any questions?
I do not. This is just a continuation of the ones we reviewed last time. Any questions for
I
for
didn't
Gwen?
have any.
Okay. We'll look for a motion on the BOE adjustments.
So moved?
Second?
I assume that's an approve.
Yes, that it's approved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we will move to item number 5. This is a discussion decision adoption of a resolution as part of the recertification process for the Morgan County Justice Court. And that is resolution number, let me get the number here. No, 19 is sales and use tax. So is this 20?
Must be, but she didn't give me.
It'll have to be.
It's resolution CR-22-.
Dash 20. is what
20.
it would be. Yep. So this is a process I believe we do every 4 years of recertifying the Morgan County Justice Court.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution CR-22-20, a resolution of the Morgan County Commission requesting the recertification of the Morgan County Justice Court.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Do we have to do that individually? I just noticed that on the.
You know what, it is a
packet.
resolution, we probably should, and it does have a individual vote marking, so we'll do this as a roll call vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fackrell votes aye, Commissioner McConnell?
Aye.
I vote aye, Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. And thank you for keeping me straight on that one, Commissioner Wilson. Okay, moving to item number 6. Chief Kerrigan, discussion decision. This is an agreement. It's actually 2 parts, and what we're looking to do today is approve a resolution which will allow 2 members of the commission to act on behalf of the commission to execute an agreement for purchase of a fire truck. And we've already done the initial purchase agreement for this. This is just the final negotiation of the agreement itself. Are there any questions specific to the agreement that you have? We do have Chief Kerrigan here to answer any questions.
Weren't we just going to pass the resolution to do that, and then Garrett was going to work on the negotiations?
Correct. So the resolution just allows us to negotiate it. That's right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we designate yourself and Commissioner Wilson to act on behalf of Morgan County with respect to the fire department lease and purchase of this fire truck.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving to item number 7. This will be a fairly quick item. Commissioner Fackrell and I had a little discussion about this recently, and I wanted to get it on our agenda to discuss. And that is that we have recently had a number of members of the community approach us and discuss accessory dwelling units, which we currently do not allow in the county, but we would like to direct the planning commission to planning department and later commission to review and present some potential ADU ordinances.
I had asked one of the community members to go and research some things for us. And he's here tonight if anybody has any questions on it. Otherwise, I'd say we could have him work with Josh.
And he sent us some sample ordinances that we'll forward on to Josh, and I know Josh has access to a lot of sample ordinances as well, so it's something we can move forward with.
Because over down in North Salt Lake, they have pretty good.
I'm just interested in what the nature of the direction is. I don't have an opposition. So the state has passed a statutory provision that prohibits us from restricting them except in particular areas designated. Is that what we're looking at? Or are we wanting to recognizing the state directive but give some guidance around what they're...
I think the latter.
Okay.
Is what I'd like to see happen. And again, we're not discussing whether we are or aren't. All we're discussing is directing them to give us some thoughts.
I think I'd just be interested to have the direction. I think Josh has a question.
Yep, Josh.
Our current code has an internal accessory dwelling unit allowance already. We just don't allow detached secondary dwelling units.
That's right. That's the one that we'd like to address.
Oh, detached.
Yeah,
sorry,
detached.
we should have been clear on that. Yes, we're aware that there is an internal accessory dwelling unit. It's the detached that we'd like to at least discuss.
That's all that is required by the
And
state, is the
short-term.
internal ones.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals too. Because that's become a problem within the county. We need either a problem or a benefit, but we need to get working on that also.
Needs
Sorry
to be
if I'm not very
some
loud
structure
tonight.
around it.
Structure around that, so that way we can either have them or not have them with legalities.
Is that clear enough, Josh?
Yeah, that clarifies.
Okay.
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 Okay, thank you. Thank you, Clark. We need a resolution or not?
Just a motion.
Motion. I move that we remand to the planning department and the planning director to review and forward recommendations on future accessory detached dwelling units and short-term rentals. Some kind of a code or ordinance, however you want to say it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, we now move into, well, with the exception of one item, what is substantially our land use section of the meeting. So we'll start with item number 8. This is Planning Department, Wasatch Peaks LLC, request approval of the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Phase 2 subdivision final plat.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is for application number 22.057. It's actually a continuance from your previous meeting. I had inadvertently advertised it as a preliminary plat approval when it's final plat approval. With that said, staff has reviewed the application. The engineer, surveyor, and fire have reviewed the application. There are surveyor comments that need to be addressed. Those comments, one of which includes providing proof to the county surveyor how WPR surveyor set their monuments or their points so that they can track down some of the information that's been brought up by Mr. Kobe. That can be handled as a condition added to this item. and we will verify that before recordation is approved. With that said, staff is recommending approval of the application. And if you have any questions, the applicants are in the audience.
So just to clarify also, or add on to what you said, Josh, the county surveyor will not sign the plat until he is satisfied with that item that was brought up, correct?
Yeah, I spoke to him today. This is a critical item, so he will review that. Their surveyor will need to contact them with the proof of how they set the monuments. And if he finds that there's an error, then the plats will need to be changed according to where the monument should have been set.
So why would you recommend it for approval and not just have this taken care of previous to final approval?
Because these items can be handled administratively and verified by our county surveyor as well as the county engineer.
Okay, so Ed, I'm going to address you because you're the person that's always stood up here and said this. So as I looked through this, you have always said we are working with the Bowmans and the Whitakers and all these people, and we will make sure that we address all these concerns with them. They have access to their properties and all this, and now I'm concerned because I thought this was being handled.
You know, I was under the impression it was being handled as well. In December 9th of last year, we met with the Bowman family, and in particular Mr. Kobe, who's their spokesman, and we've been meeting with them every year for the last 3 and I believe 4 years. And at that time, we went through the history, and we had a year prior finding we did find their survey monuments. They were never recorded. So a survey had been performed in the mid-50s, and our surveyor at the time of acquisition, so in late 2018 and early 2019 when we received our Alta survey, found their points on there, as well as all the other points around on the property adjacent. In particular, we were focused on neighboring properties around. It wasn't until later in the development and design process we realized that their survey was both unrecorded and not where the section corners are located. So while there was a survey, again, never recorded, it just picked 3 points that were in space, basically not along the section lines between Davis County and in Morgan. So we had prepared multiple exhibits in 2020 and 2021 that we had shared with Mr. Kobe that said this is where your property exists in space because it is a quarter section. It's on the section lines and the lines that divide the section. And so in the most recent meeting in December of 21, when we were discussing access, some of their concerns and goals with their property, and what we were doing with their access, because we were recognizing their prescriptive easement and saying we were going to modify the location of your road, but we were changing it from a 20-degree slope to a 15-degree slope as it winds through our property to ensure that they can have continued access. We also told them at the time the property needs to be adjusted to where it exists in space. And that was the exhibit and what we did with Mr. Kobe at that time. So that was news to us, and we haven't chatted since then about any conflict with that. So we went ahead and recorded with the county the location of the monuments where they should exist in space with that adjustment. And in fact, in 1955-ish, one of their corners was 230 feet out of alignment that didn't even exist on the main section line. So we feel like we've been meeting our needs in communicating with them, telling what they're doing, what we're doing, and improving their access while recognizing very clearly that they have a prescriptive right to access their property.
So the picture I saw has a road that dead ends into a mound of huge dirt.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, how's that helping their access? I guess I'm confused.
Well, their access was shifted on that road where the grade had to come up. Their access was shifted 50 to 100 feet to the west and then connected those two roads there. And the field guys discussed with the Bowman family at the time how that access would connect, and we'd have to come onto their property to provide the new access. But that access has been existing since we started construction and has been used throughout the summer.
So did they lose any ground because of this?
No, I believe it was shifted in space. I'd have to look back at our notes, because they're, as originally recorded, well, I think as originally designated, because their one corner was so far off, they had more than 160 acres, which is normally a quarter section. But with that adjustment in space, they would come back to around that 160, and then that was just shifted over. But I'd have to look at the exact details on that, because it has been since earlier this year, I believe, that we recorded that new survey.
So when you had that survey done, did you include them in that or not?
I don't know if they were distributed or they were on the distribution list or not. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
So I got just a couple thoughts here, but I don't want to misrepresent the property owner or Wasatch Peaks either, but I've seen where you have two different surveyors and they claim two different things. And so I think ultimately, if they don't agree on where a section corner can be, ultimately it's a private property issue between the two adjacent property owners of where that needs to be and why. But I don't know if the private property owner has got a surveyor or not. I think he's relying, or they might be relying currently on the county surveyor. But it'll be interesting to see what the county surveyor with your surveyor, once they get together and say, hey, this is why and this is what we're doing. I don't know if that's happened yet. It doesn't sound like it's happened yet.
I think we just became aware of this afternoon. So, and we're happy to put our surveyor at SOMAS in touch with Mr. Kobe's surveyor.
Sounds like he will be regardless.
He's obviously had a communication with the county surveyor through the process here.
But I don't want to say this is this happens often, actually. It's not something that never happens. So I think that's a very good idea to get those surveyors together, make sure they're on the same page and that they agree. And
we definitely agree. This is in section 14, so the phase 2A plat that we have in front of you tonight is in section 11. So they're not even adjacent to each other. The two sections are separated by a distance.
They're directly adjacent to each other.
11 and 14.
Just north of section 14.
But the location of the plat within section 11, there's no property lines up against the Bowman property.
Do you know if this questioned section corner is, I'll just call it a rogue section corner in terms of the grid?
It is.
So it doesn't, are all of the section corners off or just this one?
I believe it's these two, or it's in that general area. If you look at the whole section line, you can see that corner of the, it would be the northern line of the Bowman property is at an angle. It comes up, squares off, and then comes back down where it picks up the line all the way over to Davis County. So that's why when I say we shifted it into space, so that it would be as legally defined in the property description, the quarter section lines, utilizing the section lines.
Yeah, I just don't think we have all the information without the two surveyors getting together and saying, hey, this is where we've come up with these, and the reasoning behind it. It does look like lot D38, just the bottom corner of it, does actually cross that line between 14 and 11, if I'm reading it correctly.
That's okay. Correct.
So.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've reviewed the legal for 25 home sites.
Jared, did you look to see what they use as their point of beginning for this phase?
I didn't go into that much detail. I know a lot of times, I was talking to actually Mr. Kobe about this, but they'll use multiple section corners to be able to define it. So, and that's due to if you have a section corner like this moved or shifted. So they'll use multiple section corners to adjust and put that where it needs to be. I'm interested in what the two professional surveyors have to say. If one says it's one direction and one says it's another direction, then they've got to figure that out. But they might agree. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I'm just, in terms of the physical location of the subdivision, if it comes off, that section corner.
I mean, if you're looking on that plat, it looks like they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that they're referencing at least.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, it actually looks like they're bringing it from the section corner what would that be, the northeast section, section corner of 10?
Yep.
That's the one they're bringing but
Yeah,
they also bring it down there at the bottom.
At the very bottom on section 14.
Yep. It looks like the actual section corners are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 section corners they've referenced. The two on the top side of the plat are midpoints, because they're half the distance, 2650 approximately.
So everything on theirs, except for D38, is on their property.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 5 corners.
Well, even D38 should be on their property, right?
Well, the location of D38 is actually in the other quarter section. The Bowmans are further to the east, so D38 bleeds over into section 14, but further to the west where WPR owns that property. I don't have an exhibit, but I do have the original Alta survey that shows, as Commissioner McConnell suggested, that section corner was, what was the word you used, errant or?
Rogue.
Rogue, yes.
He just said it bled over into their own property.
But I can share that with you, I only have it digitally though.
Okay.
So does Kobe, is that according to your understanding also?
Well, their first survey they filed in 2019, this was an official Alta survey, recognized the corner that's being moved. So it followed all the professional survey standards.
I'm talking about just D38 on this map, do you guys agree to it being, that's on their property?
So that's on their property.
Okay.
But all the measurements are done from a point which we disagree with. Currently, the Morgan County surveyor disagrees with on that northeast corner.
According to what Jared said, I think we can make that, you guys can get together and work that out.
Well, when you say you guys, the two surveyors.
The two surveys,
Because
yeah.
it sounds like Mr. Kobe's relying on the county surveyor currently, correct? You don't have a private surveyor hired or anything like that,
So we've had a surveyor as well.
Oh, so it sounds like there might be three involved, regardless. Need to get them all together and say this is why we did it, and see if they are on the same understanding, so.
Well, we have Ed, can I ask him some questions more?
And I believe today, Mr. Cook shared with you the record of survey that you can see the original corners that were not stamped with the date. It was never recorded, and those are in the dashed line on what was shared. And then you can see where and how the section lines and quarter section corners come through in the black lines where the survey was recorded, or I guess, sorry, the bigger dashed line and some full lines. And you can see how that lines up with the other and the east-west section corners and quarter section corners.
But the point you're choosing on is 5 miles in Davis County, and it was set in 1980. So you're using a point established in 1980, where the note on the survey says, no original monument found, so it was also proportionally different.
Yeah,
There's a huge mess the surveyors are going to have to do.
I guess the point I'm making is none of us are professional surveyors in here. So versus going back and forth of why we think it should or shouldn't be, when none of us have the full understanding and knowledge of this, we probably ought to rely on the professional surveyors and get them together. Would be my recommendation.
So if we added a condition that it's subject to verification of the section corners to the satisfaction of the county surveyor and county engineer, do you feel like that would cover us?
Yeah, we could emphasize that. They do that regardless, but we can emphasize it.
Yeah, well, I think where the issue's been raised, we
Yes,
ought to make
for sure.
this a specific condition.
Yep, I agree.
I have two other things before we make a motion on it. The D23, it still goes back to the same question that Robert had last time, where there's no road access, even though they're getting an easement to go to that property. My question is to the commission, more or less, and to you, is Deep Creek has the same kind of situations, and we're not allowing them to build. How come we're allowing them to go against code?
They're not going against the code.
Yeah,
They're not?
No, they have a development agreement, which is their entitlements and their zoning.
Okay.
As long as they're in line with their entitlements, they have a development agreement amendment that was approved last year that stipulates that they are not required to have frontage due to the terrain.
Okay. And so,
Deep Creek Mountain or Deep Creek Road does not have a development agreement. They are required to follow our zoning code.
okay. And so then the next question I have then is, all the state permits that you are required to have for this project, are they there yet? Because that was one of the conditions.
Are you talking about for the individual lots to develop across the
Yes, the streams and that kind of stuff.
Those are required to be submitted at time of building permit.
Okay.
The property owners will have to provide proof that they have obtained all the state permits and licenses that they need in order to build their bridges across those streams.
Okay. Okay, I'm satisfied with
Any other questions for the applicant or for staff?
No, I just want to be clear that, so on a final approval, if a condition has to be met before it's actually.
Before it's recorded, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad Roberts wrote down that condition.
Robert seemed to have a really good condition, so maybe we'll look for him on a motion here.
And then we'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Phase 2A Final Plat Application Number 22.057, allowing for a 25-lot subdivision of land located at approximately 4213 North Morgan Valley / Peterson, Utah, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated October 11th, 2022, and with the following additional condition: that prior to recordation of the plat, that the verification of the section corners be confirmed to the satisfaction of the county surveyor and county engineer.
We have a motion and a second, or we have a motion, I'm sorry, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Mr. Cook, on to item number 9. This is CW Land requesting approval of the Rome Townhomes site plan.
Back in September, their final plat came before you. We had determined that they had not filed for site plan review. They lacked a lighting plan. Their landscape plan had information that we still needed them to corroborate. So they submitted their site plan review. We've gone through. They received a recommendation of approval from Planning Commission. They submitted updated lighting plans and landscape plans, which I forwarded to the commission for your review, since I thought the PDFs might not come through, so you could see them clearly. They meet, I have reviewed them, and they meet our code requirements in 8-6-27 for landscaping and 8-6-44 for lighting. As such, we are recommending approval of their site plan, and to follow up, we have processed their building permits and have not held those up as well. So, in fact, the first ones were issued, I believe, just a few days ago.
I have a question. As far as the lighting, and this is a comment for everybody, I think, here. The lighting, is it dark sky code? Do we have that here in this county?
It's not called dark sky, but we have an extensive lighting ordinance which stipulates maximum amount of lumens at point source, as well as foot candles.
Do we have a downward directional?
Mm-hmm. Yep, everything has to be shielded and downward facing.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is at some of my meetings I've been going to, they say Morgan County, we need to try to keep it that way to where it's dark sky as much as possible compliant. That way it can bring in dollars to the county and it can help with the tourism. and economic development. So if we don't have that in code, we need to somehow get it into code.
I thought one of the locations was East Canyon where they actually have
Well, no, that's
different-
where it's been designated, but they're asking us in our county to try to keep, as we develop things, to make sure that we do a dark sky as much as we can compliancy and make it within our code because it brings tourism into the
I was
county.
adding to what you're saying,
Yes.
sorry. I wasn't going against,
Okay.
I was adding by saying, yeah, I believe they have they
Yeah, we
get
have
together
that,
for
we have
dark
that,
sky up in East
yes.
Canyon, which I think is great.
And we're trying to get it in other areas of the county, which would be up towards Lost Creek. We're trying to get that, so.
Well, and
I just wanted
Josh
to-
referenced a provision of the code. I think we passed a lighting code shortly before this commission was
Okay.
put in.
I just
Actually,
hope that's-
I believe lighting is also addressed in our town center zoning, is it not?
Well, it's addressed in this. It
Yes.
says, Morgan County has adopted comprehensive dark sky lighting requirements.
I just had a question, and just because, from my ignorance here, when it talks about the site lighting calculations area, it's on page 12, it's like this odd shape, double dashed line area, kind of kidney shape.
Okay.
And I'm like, what is that intended to be communicating to me?
Right.
What page is that on?
So it's on, of our packet, it's page 114. It looks like it's on page 12 of their lighting. And it's what, that would probably be the south, it'd be south of the townhome project where we're doing the landscaping.
Is that site lighting calculations area 5?
Area 4.
It says area 4. Is that just an area from which they measure the lumens or something? I just wasn't sure what that's intended to communicate.
This looks like a detention pond or something.
That's what I thought. I'm like, that looks like a detention pond to me. What's it doing in the lighting diagram?
And maybe they are just delineating where that pond is, perhaps.
I don't think that's related to the lighting at all. That's
Okay.
got to be a different layer.
It's just those dark dots on there.
Yeah, because if
That's
you look
actually within
closer,
there.
The lighting's for the roadways, right?
right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
if you
look
look
at this-
closely
this
at the
shape.
dots in the
I think it's-
roadway, there's numbers next to them, but those look like they're a different line weight, and they don't have
Yeah,
numbers.
it didn't seem to communicate anything to me about lighting, so that's why I was asking. It's kind of the center of that diagram, but I can see that there's also the roads, so. I think one of the things that's confusing about the plan in terms of the dark sky compliance is their example of the fixtures didn't look like it was a downlit fixture, but then I think that was really just it wasn't an example of a fixture, it was showing how the bases would work.
Yeah, most of those are standard that
Yeah.
they add to their construction drawings, improvement plans.
But I suppose the code that we've put on here will be followed, correct?
Yep.
Well, yeah, and then it makes recommendations as to fixtures in a separate chart. It's just that the picture was like kind of a standard streetlight looking thing.
Any other questions for staff? Is there a representative of the
Their applicant is here.
applicant? Is there any questions for the applicant? Okay. Would the applicant like to say anything?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the Rome Townhome Site Plan Application 22.060, allowing for, wait, am I reading the wrong one?
No, that's the right one.
Okay, allowing for proposed townhome plats located at 4950 West Old Highway Road in unincorporated Morgan County based on the findings and with conditions listed in the staff report dated November 22nd, 2022.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We're going to give you a little break for just a second here, Josh, and we're going to move to Commissioner Anderson. This is discussion decision Adopting an ordinance for the transportation funding local option sales tax.
So in our first Tuesday meeting of May of this year, we approved this local option sales tax, but I'm working with the tax commission in order to, part of the process is to get an ordinance written up. This ordinance, we used Summit County's ordinance and modified it, ran it by Garrett. Garrett made a couple minor modifications, as you guys saw in the email. So it's really just getting this ordinance in place so we can start the process with that local sales option. I don't know if any of you have any questions on it.
No, I was just concerned that we were following the law on that versus just putting in our own transportation.
Yeah, 2217 and 2219.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah, 22, it says that you can use it for the uses set forth in 59-12-2212.2, allowable uses of local option sales and use tax. And then there's, it says it may be used for the following purposes, and it lists roads, traffic and pedestrian safety, infrastructure, streets, alleys, roads, highways, an airport facility, an active transportation facility that is for non-motorized vehicles, and multimodal transportation, an intelligent transportation system, and there's about 4 other things.
yeah, so basically all I wanted to do is make sure that it was not restricted like another tax that we've requested or had. I just want to make sure that we're following that. That's all.
Yeah, the use is defined by state law. It's not.
Well, I just don't want our thing to not say that. So.
Okay, so this is ordinance CO-22-19. This will be a roll call vote when we do get to that point. We'll look for a motion if there are no other questions or comments on the item.
So are we ratifying it, or are we just?
No, this is approving the actual ordinance. So prior, we approved to move forward with it, but we did not have an ordinance at the time to approve.
Okay.
So now we're actually approving the ordinance.
I'll move that we approve ordinance number CO-22-19.
Is it C? Okay.
Second.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Fackrell?
Aye.
Commissioner McConnell?
Nay.
I vote aye. Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
He said nay.
No.
Okay, we are back to you, Josh. This is item number 11. Frontier Estates plat, a proposed subdivision of 10 single-family lots.
Can we take a small break?
We can.
That'd be
Let's
awesome.
take a 4-minute recess here, if we can do that.
It's okay. I read that because that's the solution that, the amount that we can collect from outsiders.
It is CO because it's a board.
You did say CO, and then in my head I'm going, we've had CRs.
So,
Yeah, this is actually one of the few COs we've done, I think. Is this a public hearing only because it's a budget?
No, it's a public hearing, and I'll explain this, but in order to get on the CIB list, because that's where the funding's coming through.
Oh, okay.
We have to access it. I'm quite confident nobody's here to express interest at all, but we did have Ben, as we see our officers doing the work for us, he's here in case there's any questions. Actually, to be fair, that's all I can.
Seven.
We've gone through more.
12. Now just go. Because this is concerning to me. Was this all discussed when I wasn't here, or was it in the previous council? I didn't know that this property had sliding issues.
Yeah, well, it's... How much time do we have? No. Did something, things with the backside, so they actually had to have professional geologists come and document and say this, it's okay to do that.
Yeah, but my understanding is they chose the cheapest route, getting that approved. They could, not doing the deep studies, that 80-foot wells, they did the 6-foot trenches, which is, I understand we can't go backwards on some stuff.
I don't know
But
who defines cheap, and if 80 feet, I don't think to slide in there, you have to go 80 feet down. I don't know who
I don't know about that. Well, I know we have probably a 75-year history of this one.
Okay, we are going to reconvene our meeting. Appreciate your patience. We are on item number 11. This is a planning department item, discussion decision, Frontier Estates, proposed subdivision of 10 single-family lots. This is is this final approval?
This is final approval.
It's final plat, yep.
So I'm just realizing that our agenda does not advertise it as final approval. In fact, it doesn't say which it is. It just says approval of the Frontier Estates plat. Frontier Estates plat.
Inside the packet, it says different.
Does it pack us?
So we got a little problem in.
Well, I'm not sure it's a problem. It does state that the preliminary plan was approved by the county commission September 7th, 2021. That approval letter went out on November 9th. So the next step is the final plat.
We need our attorney here to ask you to
Yeah,
make
you have
sure.
your,
I don't know the answer to that. Typically, if we don't say which step it is, we don't move
Was he in a
forward
meeting
with it.
or something, or?
But no, he's not. He's gone to a family event. Let's go through the process and let's.
if you would,
See what we
if you
decide.
want to continue it, to re-advertise, we can do that.
Well, I don't know. I want to make sure that we do this the right way. That's my only concern. So,
Okay.
but I think we need to hear from you and probably from the applicant. I know there's members of the public that probably want to hear about where we're at, and we'll go from there.
Okay. This is for Frontier Estates, application number 22.054, final plat approval. Property is zoned RR1 and R120. They received preliminary plat approval a year ago. This item was presented to you at your first November meeting, and it was continued to today for the applicant to address a few things. He has added comments on the improvement plans, which I sent to you, regarding the pressure system, the grinder system. I've also included additional comments or conditions to address that. Some of those comments need to be included as notes on the Mylars. I attended a UDOT pre-application meeting with the applicant. UDOT reviewed it. My understanding of the overall discussion was that there would not be a problem using that existing access as emergency access only. Typically, UDOT requires review of access points when there is a potential increase in traffic. However, the increase in traffic, as was mentioned by the applicant during that meeting, would be only due to an emergency situation. So the increase to that access would be negligible. The application process was started and will be formalized. They're in the process of that. The applicant has obtained 2 will serve letters, one from Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District. There are conditions that the grinder system that they're proposing, that they design a system that would be approved by the Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District. Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District is a required signatory on the Mylar, and I can't imagine they will sign that without that being approved by them. I've also added a condition of approval that that prior to recordation, the secondary access shall be constructed or it shall be included as a line item in the assurance bond calculations and posted with the county at the time of recordation. That the Mylars show that the 20-foot emergency access easement across the Warner property eastward. They did submit an additional page which shows an aerial photo with that easement going across the Warner property, and we would ask that that note be added to the Mylars as well as showing the easement. It would be temporary only as the Warner subdivision is being developed. The location of that 20-foot easement crosses multiple future lots, and I can't imagine those property owners are going to want the DG in their backyard for an emergency access. At the time Warner West is constructed, their primary access will become Frontier Estates secondary access, and so the temporary easement would go away at that time. At the last meeting, the county fire chief stated that the construction of that easement would satisfy his concerns. I believe the applicant has met all the additional requests the county commission has asked of them, and I have sent you copies of the maps that they sent. I've included in your packet copies of the previous will serve letters as well, and so with that, staff is recommending approval to allow the applicant to move forward towards recordation.
So, oh wait, maybe I can find it here. Do you know which note in their improvement plan relates to the grinder pumps?
Yeah, there's a note placed on page 2 and page 7. There's separate notes that were added on the right side of the sheet.
So they're not in the general notes?
Not in the general notes. These are separate notes related to the grinder pumps. Yeah.
So, thanks for sending the zip file. Would page 2 be the third file? That they all have the same title, that's why.
Oh, I apologize. Sheet 2 will, I mean, if you open it up, it'll say sheet 2 on the lower right-hand corner of the page. I apologize.
Okay, there's 2. Let me get it big enough to read.
Josh, I got a question for you. I don't know how long this development, or when this actual development started. I believe it was a while back. In the plat notes on 2 and 3, it talks about geological hazards evaluation report and geotechnical investigation report. And I'm guessing in the geological hazards evaluation, they discussed the landslide prone terrain. I'm assuming that's the case and that our staff has looked at that and agreed with what's been done there.
Yeah, those were submitted as part of the preliminary plat submittal over a year ago. I found the files in digital format, so those have been completed.
And reviewed by you?
They would have had to be reviewed by, they would have had to be reviewed by Lance Evans before I got here in order for it to go to preliminary plat.
My question on that same vein is, are the engineers that came out and reviewed that geological survey, are they still working for the state?
That would be a question for the applicant.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. So did they have to do any specific type of a survey when they did that geologic report?
They would have to
verify?
They would have to meet the minimum requirements of our code. Our code was rewritten because of the slides that occurred, and so properties that are part of a geohazards area are required to do a geohazard study as well as a geotechnical report, soils report for each lot. And
For each lot?
The developer is required to do that prior to recordation. I believe, they need to be submitted prior to preliminary plat and reviewed by the county engineer.
So in this process, if we give final approval, and something happens in the construction phase or whatever of this development, and we have a very heavy rainstorm or a snowstorm or whatever, and all of a sudden it slides off, what's going to be our liability?
Our liability will be zero.
Okay.
The liability will rest on the engineer that
engineers.
stamped those plans.
Good.
What about our moral liability?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm concerned about that too.
well, unfortunately, the zoning code doesn't deal with moral absolutes. The zoning code deals with checklists, check boxes, and requirements.
Because we've left a lot of people hanging in that area down there with problems that they have to pay for. So developers make their money, they leave, and the people deal with it, and I don't want that.
Well, I can understand that, but our zoning code, this is an administrative approval, it's not legislative in nature. So if they check the boxes, which from my review they have, then we as a county are required to approve that so that they can move forward.
And there are notes on the face of the plat that delineate the areas where they can't build and so forth. Those were all established by a geotechnical engineer. The sewer note, what I want to be clear about is, so the substantive note from my perspective is the one on page 7, and particularly note number 3, that indicates that the grinder pump and other necessary items to properly connect each unit are future installation and or the responsibility of the lot owner to operate and to maintain. I want that to be on the face of the plat so that owners are clearly informed not only of the geotechnical issues, but of the fact that that's the way their properties will be sewered, and it's their responsibility to install and maintain those facilities.
That's the note that I'd like added to the Mylar as a note, and I've included that as a condition number 3.
Okay. Sorry, did you use that language?
No, but if you can give me that language, we can reword that.
Yeah, it's note 3 from page 7 of the improvement plans.
So if this pump fails, they're saying that the homeowner has to deal with this?
Yep, and that's why you inform the buyers ahead of time that what they're buying is not gravity fed, that is grinder pump, pressure system.
How do we deal with the portion of that system that's presumably located on county property or on or under a county road
Well,
not
we are
county
not a
owned.
municipal provider, so they would never be our lines. If they are to be accepted, they would only be accepted by Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District when and if the applicant designs the system to their satisfaction. At which point, Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District would sign the Mylar.
Either way, though, they're either property of the sewer district or they're private, is what you're saying.
That's
And-
correct.
And
This
if they
isn't
are
an HOA,
private,
is it?
then if there is an issue with them, it would be the private owner's responsibility to dig up our road and replace our road, essentially.
That's correct.
I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
You know, there are some,
It's not much different than the water
well,
companies that are
or
all private as well.
in the old Rose Hill subdivision, it looks like there's a couple of people who are digging up our road to connect to the sewer system because they don't want to replace the septic system that is no longer workable. And I'm sure that's a expensive proposition, but
So how do you decide what home pays for the grinder?
each home will have its own grinder.
Oh, each home
It's
has their
it's
own
a
grinder.
pressure, there's a
Not a
back,
grinder, a pump.
there's a backflow. So it pushes up and it pressurizes against that backflow. So the line, once it leaves that backflow and into the road, it's all pressurized like a water line would be. And then whenever it fills and kicks on, it pushes it through.
And if there's
It's not-
something that gets
yeah.
stuck in there from their neighbor,
I think you try and avoid, they call them low-pressure systems. You try and avoid them as best as possible, but they exist. They exist in the sewer district now, they exist. They do exist. So you try and avoid it as best as possible.
It may not be an issue if Warner West goes in, they may be able to gravity feed to the east. That was brought up at the last meeting as well.
So the other question I had, Josh, was regarding the storm drain system. I noticed in the engineer report, they talked about whether the storm drain system would be county-owned, and if so, how access and easements would be provided to that, or whether it would be owned by an HOA. Do we know what the intention is there?
Well, the storm drain system is really, it's part of the, so there's two parts of the storm drain system. You have the retention detention basins that are part of the subdivision typically, unless they run all the water to the roads. In which case, they would go into catch basins underground, or they would flow along the street. Typically, developers are required to maintain natural and historic flow rates, so they channel the water from where it enters the property to where it has historically left the property, and they have to maintain the rates at which it left historically. So they would slow that down through their storm drain system. And that would be reviewed by Mark, our county engineer.
It sounds like in this case, what he's discussing would be HOA owned then, I'm assuming.
HOA.
There's no HOA. So who's going to take ownership of that storm drainage system?
Well, they'd probably have to be dedicated to the county as part of the road system that'll be dedicated to.
So it'd be an easement over top of that.
I would imagine.
And what if we don't want a storm drain system?
Well, I think the question is, have we maintained and operated storm drain systems and detention ponds in the past?
And the answer to that, I would say, is yes, because everywhere we've accepted a dedicated roadway, there's had to be some.
Yeah, you're right.
There would have to be some storm drain allowance or detention ponds that have drained into it.
how long before we think the Warner
I don't see it.
project might be
I
going?
don't see it on there, but. Mark
That's a
said-
question I cannot answer. I know they have a representative in the audience for the Rome. I believe they're the same representative, but whether he wants to speak to that or not is up to him.
So where is the storm drain stuff going?
Well, the storm drain, basically, that is going under the road to be fed to pretty much the low spot on the property. That's how they handle it, because historically, that's where the water has gone. So they're channeling the water down into that storm drain area, which drains under the road, if I'm understanding where you're looking.
Yeah, like where's, I don't see it on the plat.
Yeah, so that water would
There's a
typically
drainage
cross property
easement.
lines.
It's in the corner of the.
I can
it's
see
right across
that.
the side. That's what it says,
So
is
is
the
that-
drainage easement.
So you,
50-foot
you're,
drainage easement.
so we're placing weight on the steepest part of the property for sliding? Putting more water and moisture down there?
The county engineers reviewed this and didn't see any issues with it. Historically, water enters the property to the north and to the east, and it flows south and to the west. They're required to maintain that natural flow, and however they route it through their site, it's supposed to exit where it's historically exited. So the design should slow down the water because now you have more hard space. So the design will slow down the water so it exits at the same rate that it has historically.
And it discharges into the drainage.
But it's not drawn on here.
Well, technically, they only have to draw it to the extent of their property. They don't have to.
I think maybe what Commissioner Wilson is asking is, where do you plan to hold up that flow when you get a peak? Is there any kind of a holding pond or detention pond or anything, or how are you planning on holding that when you get your peak?
I haven't seen the plat.
Or is that up to your
But
engineer?
I believe it's all collected, goes under the road, has a small catch basin before it drains down into the drainage.
Yeah, my guess it'd be right here, because there's a 50-foot drainage easement. My guess it'd be they've got something here that's holding it up.
That's all, yeah, that's all been designed and never discussed. Never had a concern brought up before.
Well, I think because we haven't ever seen these before we were commissioners is why there's, that all of a sudden I have a concern. So a lot of this stuff, this has taken so long to get through this process that all of a sudden we weren't even aware of some of these things, you know?
Well, all the other subdivisions that have gone through and been approved have included similar designs.
Oh, I understand that, but they're not in the same type of terrain. And I know some of that terrain. I mean, I've lived here all my life. I know there's lots of people with cracked homes and homes, lots they can't even build on, homes that were torn down at our expense. You know, I've lived through this. I know you haven't, Josh, but I've lived through it, so this is why I'm suddenly concerned, is that all of a sudden I'm going, hold it, I didn't realize this area was this was all approved previous, you know, so that's my concern.
Okay, additional questions for staff, and then we'll hear from the applicant.
No, I think from my perspective, it's really tough because you need to, we need to make sure everything's in place, especially when you come for a final plat approval. And I know our ordinance doesn't state it clearly, but I would love to see our ordinance get in a better place from a perspective of especially coordinated water and sewer, of what kind of approvals are needed before final plat comes before us. I think if the majority of the issues are taken care of, that would be much better process than how we have it set up in our code right now. But I think we can get better with that, so.
So I do have one more question. So the developer owns the water company. Obviously, they're going to issue themselves a will serve. Do we have calculations showing that we have plenty of water to serve this? Because I know we've had water issues up there too.
I included that as part of your packet.
I didn't see it.
Pretty sure I did.
I can address that if you want.
Are you talking about the will serve itself, Josh?
Yeah, so the front page of that will serve letter, which I highlighted, so when it copied it, it redacted it out instead of letting you see. So in an attempt to help identify those numbers, I guess it redacted it as opposed to letting you see it. My apologies.
I wondered why that was marked out.
It wasn't meant to be marked out. It was transparent on my screen.
Do you have the text that you can read? Do you have the letter with you?
Not with me, no.
And the will serve should come from the engineer, correct? I mean, the engineer verifies that, because they're the ones that are over model and how it all works and if there is capacity or not, and they're the ones that actually put their stamp on to the state that it works, that there's enough water. So it wouldn't necessarily be coming from the owner of the water company. It'd actually come from the engineer that says, yes, we can serve these lots.
And also the Division of Drinking Water has all the approvals of the water companies, what their capacity is.
Well, in order to survive as a water company, you should have that, correct?
So I have the 2021, is that what you're talking about, or did we get another one?
No,
That's
there
right.
was, well, we did get another one. So we got a 2021 that was approved and
What page are
accepted
you
as
on?
part of our preliminary
137
plat.
I had Josh
37?
send them to
Yeah.
me separately, so that's why I have it.
So it's different
So
than
the
this one.
June 30th, 2021, I have.
So-
Do you want me to, what's
Yeah,
the
so
first
you're gonna read-
paragraph?
It's the very end that he had marked in. Yeah, you have the same.
So this paragraph?
Yeah, it's, so what's marked off is like the last, half of the last sentence and then the second paragraph.
Okay. So the last sentence says, subject to the terms of the development agreement, company will provide water service for 10 equivalent residential units to the project. And then the next paragraph says, the plan approval issued by the Division of Drinking Water dated March 17th, 2021. Company currently has a capacity of 700 gallons per minute from its sources. The company's current demand is 592 gallons per minute. The project will require 10 gallons per minute. The company is the record owner of the following water rights of record with the Utah Division of Water Rights, and then it lists out the water rights. There's E869 for 100 acre feet, E5 267 for 200, 35-8164 and 35-8165 together for 297.5 acre feet, and 35-8137 for 124.89 acre feet. And then there's the rest still there?
Yes.
Okay.
So, do you have that letter issued by the Division of Drinking Water?
I don't have a letter issued by
Because
the,
this is just signed by Roger Smith.
But this is what we've done with every other development that's come before
I know,
us.
but the other-
we're
every
not
other de-
asking,
every
we're not
other
asking those
development-
questions to those other developments.
It's in our code.
I'm not disagreeing, but we need to be consistent. If we're focusing
You're right, we
on,
need to follow the code.
if we're focusing on will serve letters on this development, let's focus on will serve letters on every single development.
I agree with that.
I think that CW land has way many more lots than 10.
It's not that.
So we gotta make sure, if that's what we're focusing on, let's do this, let's be consistent.
I
Is my
agree.
recommendation.
Follow the code.
So the code does say a will serve letter. It does not say from the Division of Drinking Water.
It
just
does
says-
say you have to provide the amount, the specs of the water.
Yes.
So that would come from the drinking company, right?
Yes.
All right.
From
That's
the-
all I'm asking.
from the
Not
water
the state,
company.
from
Water
the-
from the water, not from the
Yeah.
division.
Not from the Division of Water Rights, but
Right.
from the water company themselves.
That's all I'm asking to see.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem unreasonable.
Which,
No.
that should be it.
Are you saying you want to see a letter from the Division of
I
Drinking
want-
Water?
It's this seems when you've got, it seems like a conflict of interest to me, Robert. And maybe you're an attorney.
No, I understand the issue, but I don't think our code has a provision that indicates that the will serve letter, if issued by an affiliate of the developer, has to have a confirmation from the Division of Drinking Water.
Okay.
And the only thing I would say is what I mentioned before, the owners of the company do not verify the numbers and the models. And the state actually doesn't care what the state says, we need the engineer's stamp of what they modeled and how they
So
did it.
where's the engineer stamp? That's all I'm asking.
Oh, that's different than this, though.
You just said they
the
verify
report
the
that you
numbers,
su-
correct?
Yeah, reports that you submit to the state, is it every 3 years? But they have to verify that their system is working correctly, they have the capacity, so yeah, they're required to do that. So that comes from their engineer that they have on board. Your engineer is Hanson Allen Luce? So Hanson Allen Luce is their engineer that's over their water system.
And he's verified that for this.
He has to verify it by state law.
And has it been verified? And do you have that
I mean, if you
You can-
want to make a condition that we got a letter from the state saying that we are approved. This letter that was, the will serve letter last summer, that Roger did before he passed away, said 700 gallons per minute. We are now verified for 753 gallons per minute. We've had some upgrades. So if you want a letter from the state, we can make that a condition to this.
Yeah, I
We'll give you a letter from the state.
For 10 lots, I typically don't, I've never seen letters from the state for 10 lots. It's for your system, but it's not for 10 lots. In fact, they've told us stop doing that. So I guess the thought I have would be from your engineer. But that's not it's an added condition, it's not.
Or if they have an existing letter from the state Division of Drinking Water that confirms your system capacity, you just want a copy of that letter.
I just want to know that it's right. It just seems like a.
Is that what you're saying you have?
Yes, we have a letter that says 753 gallons per minute. And also they will say that we are currently serving 425 connections. But that's not including all the ones that we've already given will serves for Rome, for Whisper Ridge number 2, for the commercial, for Canyon View commercial. You add those in, it brings you up to 509. I think Roger said 592. We've had a couple others with 596. And then you add 10 more for 606 out of 753. So and those numbers are all verified through the Division of Drinking Water. But I understand your concern. And we have gone through this for a lot of years.
I know you
but
have.
We have dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements in over the last year. And now we have the capacity up to that point. And so we have capacity for anything and everything that's been brought before the county, and he even intends to serve. We still have the capacity, but I understand the concern.
No, I just hate.
But my question is, would you still say that same thing if the developer wasn't a Smith?
Well, of course. What do I have against you?
Because you've never said that for CW Land, you've never said that for Whisper Ridge number 2, you've never said that for Valpol and Canyon View. This is the first time you're saying this conversation.
So what do I have against you, Bart?
Nothing. I don't think you do. I think.
Okay, well then.
I think he identified what the concern was, because you have, the developer of this Frontier Estates is an affiliate of the water company. So if you don't have an objection to the additional condition that we just get a copy of the division, the existing letter from the division,
right.
I think we can handle it.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
It's called a conflict of interest, Bart. That's all it is.
Okay.
I've heard you say buyer beware before, and so I'm bewaring for them.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of buyer beware in this whole agreement.
So can I ask another question on the EVA, the Emergency Vehicle Access Road?
Yeah.
That is what it's limited to, as I understand it.
Yes.
And then, do you have any kind of reclamation plan for that? So if the other one comes in, your secondary access, your EVA becomes more than an EVA, it becomes a secondary access through the Warner. What are the plans for that roadway?
So the original agreement that was in place before we found out that CW Land had contracted the property, we would put the road base, the 20-foot wide road base along the fence line, right, that would meet the weight.
The weight requirements of the fire
emergency
department.
vehicles, right? And then we basically, in our agreement with the Warner family, said once another road comes in, whatever happens where that emergency access doesn't have to be utilized, all that material is theirs to use wherever. So they can take that road base and use it wherever. Now, the fact is that you have CW Land moving through at a decent enough rate, and going into wintertime, I really do anticipate that both developments will be developed at the same time.
So, okay.
So
the
and I can tell you, my
reclamation
brother doesn't
plan.
want to put all that road base down if he doesn't have to. So if there's a road going in that's already, they get to the point they can get a final approval, it's to CW Land's advantage too, because in your last meeting, it was in the Plan Commission meeting, they're asking, do they have a recorded easement through Frontier Estates? What happens if Frontier Estates doesn't develop CW Land, this Warner West does, they have to have a second access. So they can have an access, they'll have an easement up through this Frontier Estates Road, the continuation of Frontier Drive, so that they actually have that. But as they work together, I don't anticipate that any of this secondary emergency access road will even be installed.
But if it is constructed,
But if it is constructed.
which our bonding will require according
Yes.
to the conditions, then the reclamation plan is to utilize it for the construction of a new road on the Warner, or however they want to use it. Now, if that doesn't occur, then you're going to have to sell lots with the EVA in the back, right? Running along, because it's in the back of these folks' lots, not on their lot, but just behind their lot.
Right.
And it's, well, actually, no, it's in the Warner's.
It's in the Warner field.
Except
So-
for your lot 10.
So this would have to be constructed. Let's say CW Land, for whatever reason, doesn't go through with Warner West subdivision. This emergency will be installed, emergency road will be installed, and it will stay in place until there is a secondary access. So until that field is developed, that access road could be there. But to kind of alleviate Miss Everly's fears, it won't be paved, there won't be any traffic on it. The only time it would ever be used is if a fire engine had to respond and couldn't get in Frontier Drive.
And it's gated at the east end.
Yes. Yes. Because that's, yeah, the Warners still are farming that field. So there'll be gates. They're probably, I don't know, they could be crash gates that we may just put combination locks that all fire personnel know that can access through. I don't know if they want to drive their trucks through a gate or if they'd rather get out and just open the lock. But no one else will have access other than the Warner family, the fire department.
Okay.
But then, once that material's been laid down, if it ever, if was kind of more the discussion back in the summer, but probably now when that gets developed, if for some reason that material's been laid, that is then either the Warners or CW Lands, if they purchase the field, the material that's on their land, they can do whatever they want with that material, use it in their roads, whatever. I really don't see that being the case. I think the road's going to be developed simultaneously with Frontier Estates, and I think they'll both go in together and resolve each other's emergency issues.
So will that, if that's the case, will the sewer also be the same thing? That the sewer, if they're developing it at the same time you're developing yours, then you change the
What hasn't been brought up
around it?
here in this meeting, or even in the Plan Commission meeting, CW Land, the Warner Field from Trappers Point kind of goes up, crests, and then drops back down over to this Frontier Estates. CW Land probably has at least 20 of those 53 lots that are too low, and they're all going to have to be pumped, or they're going to have to put in a lift station, whatever the sewer district wants to do. But that field is falling down. You would have to put probably a 50-foot sewer trench for it to gravity feed out to Trappers Loop. So just, you'll be aware, and everyone gets concerned on these pumps. These pumps are everywhere. Summit County has them everywhere. They have remote, even as Jared mentioned, in the Highlands, there are a few homes that have their pumps. They've been on pumps for over 30 years when the sewer first installed in 89, 90. They've all been using pumps. Pumps are, it's not a dangerous. I agree with what you brought up. It should be noted on the Mylar because people need to understand, but they are going to understand when they build the home, they have to put their own pump in. Each home has its own pump. Each home has its own designated line, pressurized line. Each home has its own holding tank. In case power goes out, they have backup generators, but there's enough holding tank that you're not going to be flooded with sewage. But those are individual, each individual home has that.
So
and that's their responsibility.
Why wouldn't you put in that instead of having the homeowner's responsibility? Seems to me like you as a developer should be putting in that.
Oh, we will. Yeah, those lines will be put in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that pressure
The homeowners don't have, until the home is built, you
If
can't.
they did, it's just built into the lot price.
Okay, that's
It's
what
all
I
the
wondered, because
economics all get
if-
passed
if I
through.
was
None of
to-
these guys do it for
Okay,
charity.
I just don't want to have, if I was to buy there, which I'm not, if I was to buy there, I don't want to have to purchase one of them.
I moved off the lot to the one I'm on because I didn't want to do that. So,
And if CW land gets far enough down
The sewer might
and
be
the development, the improvements don't go in until next spring or summer, maybe CW land's already talked to the sewer district and said, hey, you're gonna have 20 of our lots, 10 of these lots, maybe you ought to do a lift station. Lift stations, they're all over the place. But Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District has kind of tried to avoid lift stations at all costs, and that's their prerogative. But maybe that lift station will go in, if that's the case, maybe the gravity will still go in time, I don't know. But we're not gonna wait for them to decide what they're doing with their plan, because we didn't even know they were gonna be around when this, like I say, we've been working on this project for 4 years now, so.
And that they have agreed to accept the sewer at the point of where everything's going to. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, I think that was in that last meeting.
That's what I thought.
Right at the dead end of Frontier States is a manhole. So these 10 lots will have their own separate pumps. Everything will pump up, discharge into that manhole. That manhole does gravity feed back out to trappers. So they're paying a connection fee, but the sewer district is not responsible. They do not maintain any of those grinder lines, pressurized lines. That's all, each individual homeowner's got that responsibility. The sewer has no responsibility other than where it dumps into the manhole.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Does the plats also show possible sliding on it or not?
well, they show on the affected lots, which is lot 1, 2,
And 3.
3, and 4.
There's a no-build line.
It's a landslide setback line, and then it references lot 4, or note 4. And then there are specifically identified building envelopes where the construction is supposed to stay. And then our building department, as part of the building department review process for a building permit, should look at the plat and make sure that they stay within the building envelope.
And the geotech engineer will be on site to approve everything that goes on right from the first time you start digging the hole. There was a field trip. Debbie Sessions gone? There was a field trip done a couple years ago. The whole planning commission went out with the state geologist. There were 2 or 3 of them there. And they showed the planning commission, they walked over the whole property. The state said, you're good. This is all, I mean, they can keep bringing up the concerns that they're, what about this, what about that? But the state has basically determined, the geologist and the geotechs have done it, signed off. The state has concurred, all the state geologists have concurred. So, but yeah, if somebody wants to be really dumb and go out and start cutting into a hillside, they may jeopardize that. But there are those restrictions, and then they would be liable for every bit of damage. When you ask who has the liability, it's not the county. It might not even be the geotech at that point if they can prove that somebody was very delinquent, negligent in something.
So the first 7 notes on the plat all go to geotechnical.
Yeah.
And geo.
But the geotech will make sure that everything is constructed and told, and everyone will be told, this is your line. You don't even, they can't even landscape behind that line. That is a no-touch line. So the landscaping has to be inside of that.
Bart, I just want to clarify, and this is for the commissioners on page 146 of your PDF. It shows the detail of the grinder pump, then it goes out to your check valve. Once it hits that check valve and goes into the private road system, the sewer district will be responsible from that point to where it's pressurized up to the gravity manhole.
They will?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
It's in
But in the meeting when they approved it, they told me we're not.
Well,
Okay. good.
it's a public
That's
road, so we
okay.
can't have residents going in there and digging up a public road, so.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And that's how your drawing actually
That's how that
shows it.
shows
So
it, yeah.
unless, I think right now that's the understanding unless we
Okay.
change that, so.
Good, perfect.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the Frontier Estates subdivision final plat application 22.054, allowing for a 10-lot subdivision of land located at approximately 6750 North Frontier Drive in unincorporated Morgan County based on the findings of fact and conditions set forth in the staff report with the following additional clarifications: that the note to be included on the Mylar with respect to the sewer pumps and grinders should reflect the language in Note 3 on page 7 of the improvement plans, specifically indicating the responsibility of the individual homeowners for those improvements. And with the additional condition that a copy of the water company's letter from the Division of Drinking Water confirming their system capacity be provided to staff.
Okay. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve with the conditions listed. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
No, I didn't vote yet.
What did you say?
I said
You
I
didn't
didn't
vote
vote
yet.
yet.
Are you abstaining or are you voting?
I'm trying to determine it.
Nay.
I'm just wondering, can I ask a reason why we would not do it?
You can ask.
Okay, you don't want to answer? Okay, I'll vote aye.
Did you say aye?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, we'll move to item number 12. Again, Planning Department item, Wasatch Peaks Ranch. Request approval of a Phase 1 amendment that will amend approximately 1.81 acres.
This is for application number 22.055 for Wasatch Peaks Ranch, Phase 1 plat amendment. The Phase 1 plat was approved and recorded. I think it was earlier this year before I got here, or last year, I'm not entirely sure. They are amending that plat. They want to move 3 additional dwelling units into this plat, which would be used for townhomes, as well as designate parcels that would be used for rentals for individuals that have purchased lots but are waiting for their lots to be constructed and completed. We have reviewed that. As mentioned in the previous, the surveyor has comments that they'll need to address. Our engineer has reviewed it. We are recommending approval.
So just 3 townhomes?
Yeah, so the original plat included D 1 through 9. They're including D 10, 11, and 12. And they're changing kind of the orientation of the road so it makes it a U shape.
Okay.
It's that section right in the middle, right? It's kind of hard to see on the.
Sorry.
On the new. No, it's not your fault. It's hard to see on the new plat.
Does this affect the overall numbers with Wasatch Peaks? Is it just shifting one from one plat to another? Is that all?
Well, they have a total of 750
Correct.
that they can divvy up. The rentals will also be counted as ERUs. When those develop,
Oh, there it is.
those aren't ready to develop yet. The 3 that they've added in will be deducted from the total 750.
So when you said the comments of the surveyor, are you talking about the same thing we were talking about before?
Yeah.
So this has to do with the Bowman issue also?
I don't think this plat does since it's already recorded, but if you wanted to include that stipulation that the surveyors meet to make sure there's no confusion, it might create some clarification for everybody.
On the title sheet, it shows clearly in section 11.
Yeah, the title sheet, it is totally in section 11, not
Okay.
section 14.
Well, I suspect that even if we added the condition, it may be easier for the surveyor to sign off on this one than it would be the other one. Another one might take more time, but.
Any additional questions for staff? Any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
We'll wait for Robert to write it.
Well,
I don't know, you weren't writing anything, were you?
the only question
That's
is,
the question.
if you prefer a condition of the verification of the section corners, like I said, I think even if we add it, it's probably more easily satisfied here to the surveyor's satisfaction than the other one, because it's not in the area, or we can just say, it's all in section 11, they've pulled from other corners, and we're not worried about it. I
I'm
think,
fine
given
either
that
way.
we've already approved this plat, and we're not changing the exterior area of it, I'm not too concerned about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree.
I can
So I'll make a motion, we approve WPR Phase 1 Plat Amendment, Application 22.055, located at 4312 Morgan Valley Drive, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated November 22nd, 2022.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we will move to item G, or 13. This is a public hearing item. Proposed Weaver River floodplain map study grant. Commissioner Anderson. Well, I guess this is combined.
It says me, but
I delegated.
if you want, I can give a brief introduction, but it's whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Anderson submitted an application to the Community Impact Board Fund for $50,000 with the county matching $50,000 for a total fund of $100,000. Part of the approval process of that board is to hold a public hearing to receive public comment about moving forward. The minutes from this meeting will then have to be included with that application in order for the board to review and either approve or deny the application request. So this is meeting a requirement of the Community Impact Board. Did that cover it?
It does. I think I'll just add, I know we've talked about this for a few months also. Pretty exciting to get to this point. It just, when you've dealt with floodways, to be able to have a mechanism now that's a newer modeling and to be able to bring that floodway in as best as we can, all the way from the boundary on the west on the city, all the way up to the pickleball courts. We discussed this before, but I know some property owners that have done, I don't know if it's a Lomar or Clomar or Lomar, but
Lomar and Colmar.
Lomar and Colmar.
Both. So
I had to do both.
So when property owners have done this before, it's just one property can cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So for $100,000 to evaluate that whole section is phenomenal. I think it's a great deal for us. It's going to help the county, the city, and residents.
And so it's a 50/50 grant match?
Correct.
And what's our proposed source of funds?
When we discussed it before, we discussed using that 1983 fund.
Oh, the flood emergency. Okay. Thanks for reminding.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions before we move into public hearing? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second to move into public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye. Isn't that a roll call, or do we have to on this?
We have to do roll call for, I don't think we have to do roll call for public hearing. We have to for a closed session, but not a public hearing.
Okay.
So we are now in public hearing regarding this item. Seeing no public comment, look for a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Back in public meeting. And we are on item 13. Any questions? If not, we'll look for a motion on item 13.
So Jared, let me just make sure of this. What we're doing, we're just doing the study to get us out of the LOPA or whatever it was, the FEMA. That's what it was at my
We're
house.
reducing the floodway, like,
Okay,
boom, so it gives
Yeah.
you so much more options to be able to do things with all that ground along the river.
Okay.
Rather than, because
didn't know if we
everybody
were doing
shies
anything
away
with it.
from it. As soon as you say floodway, they're just like, I ain't spending the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
if I could add to that, back in 2012, when FEMA started updating their maps, we started seeing a lot of the FEMA floodplains encroaching farther out because they were using a new program, new software, new algorithm. And so there was a huge increase in the number of LOMARs and CLOMARs that were needing to be filed for properties that historically weren't even in the floodplain, were now being shown in the floodplain. So.
And required to carry insurance.
Yeah, I know. And I got my own personal house out of it too, so.
Yeah, it can be an expensive endeavor. We saw a lot of it in Kentucky with the floodplain maps that were coming there. It was the new software that pushed the boundaries out further than they should have been.
Okay.
So I really think, like Josh said, this is a requirement, a public meeting requirement for us to get on the CIB list so that we qualify. So it's kind of hard because we're not really approving an agreement. It's more just approval of the process, I guess, to move forward. So
I thought we had already done it.
Maybe for submission to the CIB list?
Sure,
Is that?
sure.
I thought we had already done that when we were discussing it before.
We need to have this meeting in order to get on the list.
Okay, the public hearing. Okay, I got it.
Public hearing, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes we gotta check the
boxes. Correct.
Okay, we'll look for a motion on this item then.
I'm not exactly sure what to say on this one. I guess it would be something like a motion.
I can do it for you if you want.
Go ahead.
Okay, I move that we propose the Weaver River Floodplain Mapping Study Grant and take the funds from the 1983 Flood Fund to pay for the grant.
To pay our match.
To pay our match.
And submit it to the CIB.
And submit it to the CIB. Thank you, see?
Wonderful.
Okay, I'll second then.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Gentlemen, we have made it to the end of our agenda here. I did ask for commissioner comments earlier and there were none, but now that we've had a little bit of time, does anybody have anything you'd like to say before we?
There's no way Commissioner Fackrell does not have a comment. I just don't believe it.
There actually is. There actually is a comment.
So can I make a couple comments that I actually forgot to bring up earlier? So let's see, 3 of us attended the UAC conference last week. I'm definitely the kind of person who I'm busy with work, I'm busy with a lot of other things that I tend to push conferences off and say, hey, this isn't really going to help us a lot. I don't need to go, kind of a thing. I went to this conference and just with two separate meetings that I attended, one was a $100,000 grant that we just needed to apply for to get that I was unaware of. So we're working on that process. Another is we had a meeting with the deputy director of Department of Agriculture for the state of Utah. And he's saying last year there was $70 million for them to use. This year it sounded like there's going to be $200 million. So Commissioner Newton and I had the opportunity to meet with him, and we're going to continue meeting with them and see what we can use for those dollars for the county. So I've now changed my mind a little bit. Conferences are good and they can help, and we can really find other resources to help the county out. So,
was there any discussion about that joint thing we need to do with the other counties with respect to
The opioid?
Well, there's the opioid, but there's also something about victim reparation or something like that. I sent an email to you about it. And it was that UAC sent out the thing saying, do you guys want to do a joint program with others? But I haven't heard anything since.
Oh, yes, it was for a center, right? And there's other counties that have it, yeah, I remember.
Not the crisis receiving centers, were they? Because that's one of them they talked about.
That was one they talked about, but I don't think that's the one he's talking about.
Okay.
RTC discrimination claim.
That sounds familiar too.
Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
Right.
I think Melissa's going to address some of that stuff as well.
Okay.
And that's the first, in fact, I'm almost 100% positive that was included in there, so.
And she's on our agenda for our next meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The work
Okay.
session for our next meeting.
All right. And then just with respect to the gravel operation or not operation or whatever it was, I did send to Garrett the state's vested mining interest statute, so he has that.
Okay, good. There was some more things that might be good for the public. There's an initiative that the governor signed in last year, I think it was. It's basically HB 317, that if anybody is interested in it, it's a free course for a 4-week online course for a remote online initiative. So in other words, they give you a certificate at the end of it. When they give you that certificate, they actually will give you an interview, and they promise you an interview at least with one company, and it's called The Future of Working from Home from USU. So anyway, it's a hybrid. It could be a hybrid. They've also figured out the ones that want to work in that area, they're in the remote working from home, are normally not the younger generation. It's normally the older generation, because the younger generation needs this social aspect of life, and so they figure they want to go to work when they want to work, that is. And so that was one thing. Let's see. CVRs. Oh yeah, we got that one. The McAllister, that's the one I wanted to go over. For those and everybody's gone, I should have brought this up earlier. It's called the Larray McAllister program, and there's quite a bit of money there available also for those landowners that do not want to have their land developed, and it basically preserves their land as a complete future in open space. And they continue to farm the land. It's not developable. It's in perpetuity. So just for the public and for everybody here, whoever wants to listen, if you are wondering what you can do with your land and you want to pass it on, or not pass it on, or however you want to work it, but if you want to keep farming and you want to be able to afford to farm or to ranch, this one will help you to do that. So it's like a conservation easement, transfer of development rights, those kinds of things. And the nice thing about it is you get basically almost all the money that the value of the property is. So
For agricultural
for agricultural purposes or whatever is designated. So some of the questions I have is some of the areas that we may want to consider in the future. And I'll bring those up later. And let's see. You're right, Jared, there's more.
I'm gonna bill you.
Go right ahead. Oh, this is to do with the state is, oh, did you want to bring up this at all? From the new, Mike, did you want to bring up this from the Utah National Guard?
Oh, yeah, and Matt, you might be interested in this, talking about the gun range. So Commissioner Fackrell and I had lunch one day and started talking with the folks at the table, and the husband of one of the presenters was there. He really didn't have anything to do with counties. His wife was presenting to the Sheriff's Association. She was a therapist, but he was with the Utah National Guard, and he told us some interesting information. That is that the National Guard routinely does projects within counties, roadways. He says they've renovated gun ranges before, and all they charge typically is their fuel. Because
Really?
Yeah.
they're engineering type projects they want to do, and he said rather than going out on the desert on their, on government land there and digging a hole and filling it back in, they're happy to come do a project. So anyway, he was going to try to get us contact information, but said that we could contact the National Guard and see.
So it's basically their weekend warrior thing that they do. That's when they do it. And so under this particular one, it's a state item, or it's a state, Utah National Guard. And, I mean, if there's projects that we need done that can use their structural.
And you've got all the information.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of that in some of your planning, or when we do some planning, we ought to look into that. Okay?
They'll move dirt.
So in other words,
They'll move dirt, they'll come out and move dirt. And so I think if we were to have a plan and contact them, they'd probably be more than willing to come up and do some of that work.
For instance, some of that would have been the fairgrounds. They could have helped us with that. The fairgrounds putting in that electrical line that we need to put in there this next year. They can help us with that.
They routinely do roads, so I was thinking we could maybe even talk to them about, the road on Mormon Flats or something of that nature, where we regrade that road every year. Maybe they could go out and help us do that.
Yeah. And also, Jared and I had a good meeting with Dalton from America, what was it, American Ramp or something or other, as a potential putting in a pump bike park for the, what's it called?
And skate park. He called it
yeah.
Was it dual or?
It was a dual hybrid system.
Hybrid,
yeah. And that would be, that we could possibly put one of them over by the fairgrounds. We looked at a spot that would be great. They've sent us some information, and Jared's going to be looking at that. Jared and I will be looking at that, try to determine what we can do, what we need to do, and what we want to do is this would go along with the, not just recreation, but it would be with the tourism, economic development areas, because we could end up having, what's the name of that?
Red Bull.
Red Bull Championships that they have. It'd be on the circuit for them nationwide. So
yeah, what small town did he say was actually building one right now that was big enough for that? Was it Richfield?
Richfield.
So
Richfield
they're actually building this pump, and it's not a dirt that you have to maintain
paved.
And weeds and everything. It's actually paved. It's
Yeah.
all paved. And
Interesting.
Red Bull's interested, and they'll come around and
Yeah.
it was a really neat presentation.
So it would be something that we could consider for a vision, a future. I think it would be a great thing for our economic and tourism area of our county.
We would want to find some, it's not extremely expensive for design.
Right.
But if we can find a little bit of dollars for the design, I really think the construction, it sounds like there's a lot of energy of just the state giving dollars to have it built.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if they're going to give us some money to get it built, I think it's a very minimum match with design, so.
And then we need to consider also in a future date, we need to talk about a potential grant for the Office of Outdoor Tourism for a trail going up the river along our property. So those are some of the future things that we need to be thinking about and discussing. And
did you forget to mention soccer fields?
no, I plan on the soccer fields. Here it is right here. If anybody wants to see it, this is it.
We've seen it.
I'm a little disappointed that nobody from the fairgrounds portion was consulted in it. We'll have more talk about that.
It's a feasibility.
We will have more discussion.
I didn't see him over.
Feasibility. Also, the other thing is there's a big push on the internet, and that's one thing that I am working on, is getting the internet and having the federal government pay for the majority of it. To put in fiber optics or whatever it is, we've got to submit for another grant. And also I'm working with some other communications providers to try to get better cell phone service throughout the county, from all of them. Because the other day, the sheriff's department couldn't get it up there for Hardscrabble with their Verizon phones. They could not get cell service. So we've got to do something, and I'm just putting a push on that. And there's many other things I'm working on, but you guys are tired, and so am I.
Appreciate all the work that does go on. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, so thank you all for your hard work. And for your late nights. I know last night was a late night on budget session. I will put out there for the public who might be watching, we will be having our final 2023 budget presentation and discussion at our next meeting, which will be the, I believe, 6th of December. Okay?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.